We're live.
Christine's still away.
We're live.
On vacation?
Good evening, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the May 1st, 2014 Newmarket School Board meeting. Our student representative, Ashley Hodgson, is not available for us tonight. So can you please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I read the mission statement, some housekeeping notes. Please remember to silence your cell phones and try to refrain from any side conversations. The Newmarket School District is committed to the highest standards of quality education. We ensure a safe and successful learning community. We embrace diversity and respond to the social, emotional, intellectual, and physical needs of every child. We strive to work with the broader community to ensure that students develop lifelong skills, enabling them to be contributing and productive members of society. Right, we have some recognitions tonight.
Sometimes you get to doing recognitions and there are people that just seem to be popping up every so often. And so we have some people here who've been here before to be recognized, but there's something new which is still very noteworthy and worthy of recognition. Early in April, the elementary school conducted a Jump for Heart event, which is a fundraising effort to raise funds in support of the American Heart Association. And at one point I received a progress report that said they had received $11,000, raised $11,000 and still counting, which is just like, oh my goodness, that's monumental effort and success. So we wanted to recognize the two people who had a major hand in making that a success. And I've asked one of them, Nancy Miller, to speak a bit about this, and Shana Thorell's the other person, if you'd come up and join us.
Thank you. Before I talk about the American Heart Association, I would like to thank that Shana and I are accepting this recognition on behalf of all our students who participated in Jump for Heart and making this a successful program for the American Heart Association in fighting heart disease and stroke. And our final tally is $11,880 and change. Wow. And this is really, truly a school community event. It's not only the students that are involved, but we have a lot of teachers and staff that come down to encourage and support our students during the event. And without our families backing this and being supportive of this program, it couldn't be successful. So the American Heart Association and Shannon and I would like to thank all our students, our staff, our teachers for encouraging and supporting our students in the program, and for our families for their involvement and coming out that day to cheer us on as well. We have a Jump for Heart event. It's each year, and last year we raised over $11,000. Last year we were second in the state in the amount of money raised. The school that raised more than us, I think it was like $104. So I'd like to thank the Newmarket community for their generosity and for all their hard work in making a difference in the lives and saving lives. That's what that's about. So thank you.
Thank you. Small token of appreciation.
Thank
again.
you.
Awesome. Awesome job, and Shana, for you too. Thank you so much. Thank you both. We'll take a brief recess so that the board members can also offer their personal congratulations to these folks.
Seconds. Yep, that was good. He was adjusting.
Oh, thank you. Very impressive numbers and work from our outstanding staff. We're now welcoming visitors. The public is welcome to make comments.
I missed last time the meeting, but I did see it on TV.
Just in case no one knows who you are.
Oh, I'm
please
sorry,
state your
I'm Lynn
name.
Badger, Cushing Road. So, but I have a couple of comments, of course, and I love that fellow that got up and suggested everyone can the whole no vote, yes vote mentality and start working for Team Newmarket. I thought that was just a very cool way to put it. Anyhow, I think the school board is working very well toward this end by actually showing progress in a short amount of time. I would still like to see my little continuing list of accomplishments so I can check them off, but I'm really happy to hear that progress is being made. Having a CIP and actually having a plan for the future will be a wonderful step in the right direction. I applaud Matt Evangelista for all of his hard work and his really thorough presentation at the last meeting. So many of his ideas made sense, but what I love most is that he is thinking outside the box and not throwing away redeemable buildings. Just like the report on the boilers, I was dismayed over Mike Hoffman's report on the elementary school's modular classrooms. I can't believe that the school board was even considering leaving the elementary school in such dire straits as they rushed off to build a new junior-senior school. If I had a child in one of those modular classrooms, I would have been really screaming. I'm thrilled that you were already out looking at all available alternatives. Time is short for the next school year, but you are moving. However, please think long-term as you plan. As Mike Hoffman suggested, it might be a better long-term solution to build a real building that, if properly maintained, would last well beyond the lifespan of more modular structures. There are a variety of buildings that can be erected almost as quickly as a modular. Building for the future with technology in mind, as Matt also stressed, should be of paramount importance. I've recently learned that the newest iteration of STEM is called STEAM. The arts, stressing creativity and innovation, are now included in the process. I think we have a wonderful opportunity now to include everything in our process. So thank you for your continuing hard work. I, among others, really appreciate the many hours you're putting into many issues and the progress you're making. I'm glad you're not belonging to any of the groups that have invited you to join. You can certainly benefit from their discussions without being a member. You have more than enough on your plate. So thank you.
Any other public comments?
Hi, my name is Krista Zurich, and I live on 8 Lamprey Street. I'm just going to read my comments because I find it easier. I watched the broadcast of Matt Evangelista's presentation to the school board 2 weeks ago and was impressed with his energy and enthusiasm. I'm very much in favor of a long-term solution for the school problems that Newmarket faces, and Matt's willingness to put himself out there and think outside the box with a potential solution was marvelous to see. I would like to challenge the school board to demonstrate their ability and willingness to lead by looking seriously at Matt's ideas. I continually heard Matt say, "It's up to you," and I agree with him. Most specifically, I would recommend that the school board form a facilities committee, which may be like your CIP, immediately, to include members of the school board, budget committee, and community members, with the goal being to develop short-term and long-term plans that will address the important issue of solving our school crisis in a planful, logical, and cost-efficient manner. Whether or not Matt's plan is the final plan is not what matters to me. What matters is that the school board is inspired by Matt's energy and enthusiasm to take action now. A good example of what happens without action and long-term planning is the dangerous present conditions of the modulars at the elementary school. It's frightening to think about what could happen to students in those buildings if these hazards hadn't been identified. It just makes sense that old structures that are falling apart may have multiple inherent risks. What risks might still be out there that we haven't identified? As the school board makes a decision to rent or buy modulars, I would also ask that they consider the possibility of building a solid structure on that site similar to Matt's plans. Of course, cost is a concern, but with planning that is thoughtful and takes a one-step-at-a-time approach without forgetting about long-range planning, there is a likelihood of moving Newmarket schools successfully towards the future. As I heard Matt Evangelista speak, I thought of Bobby Kennedy quoting George Bernard Shaw when he said, "There are those who look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not." This is my challenge to the Newmarket School Board and the town of Newmarket. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
I'm Tom Switek, and I also have the pleasure of living at 8 Lamprey Street with my wife. I was at the last meeting, and I saw the presentation by Matt, and I just wanted to encourage the school board to, like other people have said this evening, think outside the box. I wanted to do that with a short story that you're familiar with, but maybe not so familiar with, and I think it illustrates what I'm hoping for in terms of outside the box and results. April 1775, Concord and Lexington occurred, and the War began of Independence. March 17th, 1776, the British left Boston Harbor because cannons had been placed in Dorchester at a strategic position. They didn't want to be shelled helplessly. The people of Boston have now, St. Patrick's Day and Evacuation Day to celebrate for the rest of the time, but they thought that they had won. They thought the British were disappearing to England. The British fleet sailed south to New York City, which is more strategic. In the spring of 1776, Washington left Boston with 28,500 men, mostly farmers, not professional soldiers. This was not a country yet. 28,500 men toward New York City. In August of 1776, after that entire spring and summer of setting up defenses, there was the Battle of Long Island and the Battle of Brooklyn. The British fleet had come up the Long Island coast into the East River and essentially annihilated Washington, along with professional Hessian soldiers. The United States, to-be army was reduced to 10,000 men in that series of battles. And Washington escaped in the night crossing the East River. This was not his only river crossing. And into the other side, there were more battles and in the New York City, New Jersey area, and the force now was reduced to 5,000 men. And this was a general who was not yet famous, was just given the shot from Virginia to lead this troop. So now we're into the fall, and armies in that time period did not fight in the winter. It just was not done. So Washington has this choice. He has farmers who, they're not conscripted, they can leave at any time, and they're wanting to go back to their farms. He has to convince them, beg them, really, to stay. He wants to, the only way he can do that is to inspire them. He has to have some kind of victory, he hopes. And he's now with 5,000 men. He crosses the Delaware River on Christmas of 1776. He attacks the town of Trenton, New Jersey, where the Hessian soldiers were held up for the winter, but also drunk from Christmas celebration. Captures all of them, who had slaughtered half his troops in Long Island. The British counterattacked, and Washington on January 3rd, crossing back over the Delaware River, hit the British from behind and stopped them 17 miles from Philadelphia, which was the capital of the action. So Washington, as a young general, if you can imagine, not famous, not having any cachet, he decides to do this in the winter on these 2 nights with 5,000 men left from 28,000. If he fails, it's over. If he stopped, it was over. The British were going to take Philadelphia in the spring. And I just want to point out that that was thinking outside the box. And the Revolutionary War did not end until 1781, 6 years later at Yorktown. So Washington, in thinking outside the box, stopped the process from disintegrating without any knowledge of where it would go. And it was 6 more years of war before we have our history as we know it. I just bring that story to you because probably you're not familiar with how that worked. I wasn't. I did a lot of reading this winter about the Revolutionary War. And there's an example of some thinking outside the box that actually was real, with real risk, with someone who shouldn't have done what he did. Just should not have done what he did on Christmas night in 1776. So I wish you all thinking outside the box lenses anyway, whatever happens.
Anyone else for public comments? All right, seeing none. Moving on to approval of minutes. Minutes of April 17th, 2014.
I'll make a motion to approve the April 17th minutes.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Moving on to minutes of April 17th, 2014, non-public meeting.
I move to accept the minutes of the non-public April 17th, 2014 minutes.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Seeing none opposed. Excuse me. On to committee reports. Superintendent's
Student report. She emailed me, Ashley did email me to say that
Oh, okay.
she would be absent, but she'd email me her report, and I never received it. So I don't have a student report for you. A superintendent's report. I have several items here. Obviously, everything I've given you is kind of background to the agenda, but there are 4 other things that I ought to comment about. You may have noticed at the very end of the agenda for next time, we've scheduled a school board work session. It says meeting, but it's really that 1-hour work session concept that we talked about. And today I was able to confirm with Steve Fournier the topic that Gail and I had talked about recently, and that is I've asked the town administrator to come. He's also going to bring the finance person to present to you the CIP plan and their 5-year forecast, so we can take a good look at what it is that they do and how what we do will easily integrate with that. So that's what's planned for the 15th. Okay. Secondly, as I noted in my minutes, in my report, that I did have a fire and life safety meeting today, and there are a couple areas that I might as well talk about now, I think. First, relative to the bid process, there is a review committee that needs to do some work next week. We'd like to have a school board member join this committee, so as I'm talking, be thinking about it. Let me describe what it would be. Joining Christine Bluen and Chris Andriski and Bob French, like to have a school board member join in this process. Now, they would be the people who would select the recommended general contractor that ultimately comes for your approval. So the process would be this, that all of the applications would be rated by that committee on Monday. So anytime Monday, if you're available to come in and do the rating, well, that's one thing in your favor for being on this committee. And that will lead to a short list of people who would be interviewed. That short list would be invited back for Wednesday. Wednesday, they would walk the building with the principal and with Bob French. There's no need for a committee members to join. They could if they like, certainly. And then on Friday is when they would be interviewing these firms. And the times would be dependent upon the schedules of the committee members. So if you think you got some flexibility on that date, then again, it's really Monday and Friday, and if you can come out Wednesday, that'd be great, but really Monday and Friday. And so then after that, they'll be assessing what they've seen. They'll be assisted by Rick Molaski, Mike Hoffman, whom you met last time, and Dan Bauer. They're non-voting people, but I think they'll help explain some things to you and answer any questions you might have. And then once there's a selection or recommendation, then comes to the board for your approval on the 15th. So that then we'll have everything in place and can get going. We're really a good bit later than we were a year ago, so it's really important that we adhere to this timeline and get a decision made and hire somebody good, so there was that piece that was discussed today. The other thing that we did is we had a discussion around what's happening in this, for this summer, and how does it affect the spaces we have, because as we near the end of the year, we have to move furniture out. We'll be getting some storage containers as we did last year and moving furniture and other things out. So we clarified what rooms had to be vacated for the summer. Again, the furniture and equipment will be moved to the storage bins. The planned work, again, very simply, is primarily in that original building, the 1924 building, if you will, where there's a top floor replacement of ceilings. There'll obviously be electrical work once we open things up. There'll be wiring for our new wireless system. I'm not, where I wasn't at the last meeting, I'm not sure if you were told, but over April vacation, our two tech experts wired for wireless, a new wireless system. They wired the elementary school, and they wired the high school, junior, senior high school, everything except that old part of the building. And they saved you somewhere in the vicinity of $15,000 if you had gone outside to do it. So it was great effort on their part. They worked extra to get it all done. And so now what they're going to do is do the last part of the high school in tandem with these renovations. So that's their plan. Let's see, so wiring for new wireless. There are stairway and stairwell fixes that need to be done. There are ramps that are non-compliant. They have to be changed. And as a result, then some doorways and doors have to be changed. But it's really all in that part of the building, which is a good news story because that means we can use the other part of the building. We'll be able to totally secure the other part of the building away so that we can do all of our summer programs, junior, senior high, at the junior, senior high. So that's a real important thing. So anyway, that was the gist of our meeting this morning. Let's see. Two other things. Gail and I met the other day, and we agreed that we would draft a memo that will be sent on your behalf to town council. Once it's done, obviously, you'll get a copy. And it's regarding using CNG for town and school facilities. Just kind of put that on the agenda, and let's put it to rest one way or the other so that we can plan our own facility, our own energy futures, if you will. Okay? The last thing is that the town is in the process of putting together a committee to renegotiate the Comcast contract, the cable contract. And that group has not started work yet, but typically when they have done this, the school district has a representative there. I don't know the last time whether it was a board member, but where it appears to be heading is that the level of educational programming has grown so well, and for the town programming, that in Chris Williams' estimation, Channel 13 is maxed out. And so we're at that point, which we've been building towards, to move towards a second cable channel, and that one would be dedicated to education purposes only. So that would be part of this renegotiation. And as a result, and I mentioned this to Gail the other day, I took some liberty here to approach Annette Blake to represent us. Obviously, you could choose to do it if you wished, but it really seemed to me we're heading in a direction of even more use educationally. I really felt the need to try and see if we could get somebody that knows the instructional side, obviously does the drama and productions and so forth, but then also somebody who's a Newmarket resident who, as she tells me, is a Comcast subscriber. So she's got all those qualifications. So I did speak with her, I think it was yesterday, and she said, yeah, she was good to give it a try. We have no idea when it starts or what it is, so unless somebody else wants to step forward and thinks they'd rather do that, then that's fine. But it really ends up being Gail's appointment, because as she's done with the others, appointing to a committee. So.
I think she's well qualified.
Yeah. Okay, good idea. Okay, so you're okay with that? And I'll confirm that with her. Okay.
the more that we can do down the line, and I think having somebody from the staff that can help with an instructional vision,
Yeah.
because we do a lot with cable right now in terms of capturing what happens. But there's a lot more we could do in terms of, it's a snowy day, flip the switch, and on comes instructional programming. I don't know if we're doing story hour at 3 o'clock, but there's no reason why somebody at the elementary school, our new librarian, media generalist, couldn't be running a regular program that would be educational and of value to little ones who, in the winter months, maybe could spend 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour doing something other than beep, 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 beep on a screen, right? And they could get value out of, I mean, there's so many things. For years in Exeter, one of the assistant, she's now an assistant, she's retired now, she did story hour. It was the coolest thing. It wasn't on TV, it was literally in the school, she did story hour, but they talked about capturing that. So as we can think about that, blended learning, flipped classrooms, there are so many things that could dive to that.
The window's opened enough.
Window's
that we
open
can,
enough, yeah.
You know,
So,
yeah.
Good,
yeah.
congratulations.
I mean, to give an
and that-
example, and I won't let the entire cat out of the bag, but there's a recognition that I wanted to do at our next meeting. When I talked to the people, they said they had a conflict that evening. And so we were brainstorming and decided, well, let's do a video, and we'll bring you here as a video. And so you'll see what the video is, and that'll be part of it. And so
Absolutely.
that's something, it was really meant to promote an activity coming up later this spring.
Yep.
It'd be nice to have things like that, and yet right now, I guess it's so jam-packed, it's hard to get things on there. So anyway, that's where
It's great.
it looks like it's heading, and let's hope that it happens. Okay, that's all that I have for my
Can we
report.
go back to the
Yep.
Fire and Life
Sure.
Safety? You said Monday and Friday, are there like specific meeting times? What's the,
Monday, it's flexible, because it's not a group, it's just when you had time, you come in, and just, there'll be a rating sheet there, and you'd probably do it in the business office, and Christine would be there to help you if you have questions about the rating sheet. She puts it together. And then you go through the different interest letters and materials, supportive materials they provide, and you kind of rank how you see each one on that criteria. And then on Friday, it's really going to be the committee saying, okay, I can do 2 to 6 or something like that, and then we invite the shortlist people in for that. So it's that Friday is flexible depending upon your schedule and others. That's all that I was told.
I know,
Yeah.
I remember doing it for last summer's work. I was on one of those committees.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
We weren't sure. Somebody said, well, I was a school board member last
Yeah,
time. And I
yeah.
said,
I mean, it was fascinating.
yeah, it's a good experience. It really is.
It is, it's
Yeah.
difficult with schedules and things like that.
Yeah.
I do have the time.
Can you do
So-
that?
So I don't mind doing it.
Is that okay, Gail? Is that what you,
Oh,
is that fine with you?
Great, yeah, thank you.
All right, good.
Thank you very much.
All right, so show up sometime Monday. Stuff will be ready.
Okay.
We'll go from there.
Thank you. All right. My chair's report. Sorry, I keep having a little bit of a frog in my throat. I think it's from the pollen, perhaps. All right, so just a few updates in regards to town council and the school board. The chair of town council and I have had a discussion again about the direction the school board has begun to determine to take in regards to facilities and what support and assistance the council may be able to offer. We would like to continue our discussion and hopefully within a short amount of time have a follow-up meeting to determine how the school board would like to proceed. So once we determine fire and life safety, I'm hoping that we could determine a direction as a board, and then the chair of town council and I can discuss what next steps, if any, the board would like us to head in.
Now, couldn't all of us meet? Why does it just have to be the 2 chairs, or why couldn't it be as a group?
I think we're following the direction of the community, asking the chair of town council and school board to sit and have a conversation just to see, you know, what jurisdiction town council has, what solutions we're coming up with as a school board.
And then at what point, though, do you think that it would become a group effort? Because that would show unity within our
Oh, absolutely.
community as well.
Right. I think, you know, we'll have a follow-up conversation at our next meeting and determine what we would like to do as a board, what direction we want to head. All right, superintendent search. I know that that's within our program, but I just wanted to give a quick update. I'll keep it simple, and then I can give more information. I had the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Ted Comstock from the New Hampshire School Boards Association, and gave him some information about the board and the direction that we were discussing. And I can get to more details when we get to it in the program section of our agenda. One last thing, the football contract. The board tabled the football contract presented at our previous meeting. This tabling was in no means meant to appear as if the board was intending to cancel the program. In stark contrast, it was to allow the board time to appropriately process and formulate questions in regards to the contract and its financial implications for the school's budget and students before any decision was made. The board met on Tuesday and voted in favor of the football contract for the school, as we all agree that this opportunity is a valuable endeavor and investment for our students. And I wanted to say thank you to the community members who came and met with us and asked questions, and it was a nice special meeting, I felt. That's all I have. All right, we're on to program. Curriculum update with Pat Valentine.
Good evening. For those of you that do not know me, I am Patricia Ballantyne. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction in the district. I'm here to give kind of a progress report, update, answer any questions. I sent along several documents to kind of give you an idea of what we do. I sent you the synopsis of what we've done in professional development planning this year in terms of early release days or a whole workshop day. Sometimes the schedule differs at both buildings based on needs that might happen at that building. I don't know if you want to go through that and address it one by one, but we will continue to meet as a committee. We have a PD, Professional Development Planning Committee, that meets once a month. Sometimes we meet at 6:30 in the morning, and then we flip it the following month and we meet at 7:30, so that we can get everybody's schedules a little bit in line. Because both buildings sometimes have different needs again, we plan professional development a little differently. We try planning at the beginning of the year, thinking globally, but then there are things that come up that you have to say, okay, next early release day, we've got to do this. For example, transition has to happen between the 5th and 6th grade teams enough ahead so that we have that information for teachers and students to make that transition as smooth as possible. Or, for example, there's a whole day off in December where the elementary school teachers use it for parent conferences, but down at the junior, senior high school, they have professional development for that day. So it's kind of individualized. We've spent finishing up next Friday on May 9th, discussing the new Danielson model that we're looking at in terms of teacher evaluations, and that's been a really good experience. We've had a manual for a book for teachers to look at. We've had a manual for everyone to discuss. I believe that everyone is in step with what we're doing and how it looks. There's been great conversations. We've used exit tickets in terms of, anonymous feedback so that we have questions that we can answer as administrators, or put them out there for a little clarification from staff. I think it's been a real worthy endeavor. Next year, we will have kind of like a pilot of how the new Danielson model will work. If you do not have a book, I can certainly make sure you have one. I think that would be helpful. I know we could get it online, but it's 150 some odd pages of waiting. No. So I can make sure you all have a book.
Pat?
Yes.
Could you give a little background as to why we're doing this?
Why we're doing PD or Danielson?
The Danielson thing, like where that came from. Like, I know where that came from, but.
Danielson is really an evaluation instrument that we've used before, but like anyone who looks at their profession and reflects, Ms. Danielson has come up with a new model that really isn't very different from the last model, but it is a rubric that scores performance, professionalism, educational strategies in the school district for our teachers. They have the rubric in front of them. They discuss their planning, what their classroom looks like, how it's set up, how are they viewed in the community in terms of do they participate in activities, do they spend a lot of time in the classroom. All those different parts of teaching are evaluated on a rubric system. And then you don't get a total number, by the way. It just evaluates where you are, and it's good for goals. You start out kind of maybe in one place, and you can look, well, gee, if I work towards this or this, I move this far up on the rubric. It's a really good evaluation tool for the teachers themselves. There are lots of discussions about, one of the first discussions I heard was the rubric has 4 columns of progression. And someone who didn't look at it first said, gee, I think of myself as a good teacher. Well, then you look in the rubric and you're probably a little better than you thought you were. Yeah. And it also gives you ideas on how to look for the future. We write goals every year. We write a professional development plan that includes goals. Well, if you look at that rubric, it kind of gives you a little hint where you could be going. And then administrators sit down with you and say, okay, how do you think you could get there? Those discussions are important. So in looking at that rubric, Ms. Danielson has come up with I think it's a model that has clearer language in it. The only piece for me that wasn't as good was we used to have a separate rubric designed by Ms. Danielson that spoke to specialists like the library media specialist, the school nurse, because their job descriptions are a little more or less out of the classroom environment. This model doesn't have it, but we're going to work with it so that it is good for them too, because it's important for them.
Can I ask just a few questions?
Sure.
So, the elementary school is a Title I school?
Yes.
So is Danielson aligned with the InTask and the DOE requirements?
It will be.
Okay.
That's why we have another year. We don't have to have it done until 15, 16.
Right. And so what's Danielson's stance on the SLO goals, or how can that be aligned within the evaluation model?
For me, according to what I've learned from the state, of course, we were not a priority or focus school, so we didn't get as much input in the very beginning. And a priority focus school means that your students weren't achieving at a level that the state or federal government thought of. We do take Title I money, so we are considered a Title I district. Mm-hmm. We have a Title I school in it. So SLOs will become part of our learning steep curve next year. There's a lot going on.
Right.
But yes, I met with the Title I area director, Mary Ellen, about 2 weeks ago, and only because I wanted to know if we were a priority focus school, because that changes the level of funding, and you get more money, but you have to spend it. I think we're in a really good place. I think, we put it out to teachers, but for them, it's one more piece of this. It's kind of like the perfect storm in my mind. You have SLOs, you have standards to look at. We're looking at standards-based report cards, and everything's about the same thing. It's a lot of repetitive conversations, you think sometimes, but I think for me, it's sometimes when you have that conversation 2 or 3 different times with 2 or 3 different people, it provides clarity for everybody.
Well, and it creates a common language that
Right.
you're talking about.
We've really worked hard on making that common language, that K-12 piece, a little stronger.
So Danielson aligns, you said,
Yes.
with their professional development plan?
It will.
Okay.
It did with the old one.
That's tied to the collective bargaining agreement, is it? I mean, that's what I was
That
trying to get at.
piece is, yes.
Like, this
That's part of their
training
CBA.
that you have now was kind of what we agreed to do.
Their older evaluation models had her
Right.
previous model.
And we said that when we did the last collective bargaining agreement, it will give them a year's worth of training
Let me
on it.
explain that.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the state applied for a waiver to No Child Left Behind, remember we've gotten away from AYP and all of that? Well, that's because the state applied for a waiver. And one of the federal requirements that they've imposed on states that seek these waivers is a new teacher evaluation system. One that incorporates student achievement as an element in their measure of performance. And this, in typically New Hampshire fashion, we were unique, I think, in applying for a waiver with a teacher evaluation model at the state level that allowed flexibility, local control of what that design looked like. Many states simply say, here's our model, every district uses it. But that's not New Hampshire's way. They've got a framework that districts use. So we have a teacher evaluation committee that is defined in the collective bargaining agreement, and they have begun meeting. I think they've had 2 meetings already, and they are looking at how to reframe our evaluation process in a way that aligns with Danielson, because we've agreed to that, and that's certainly appropriate, but also agrees with the tenets of this state model. And we're not there yet, but at some point, that group will be defining what that student achievement component will be. SLOs is one way to do it. There's student learning objectives, I believe.
Yes.
And it's our own homegrown self-assessment for measuring student progress. That's really what it is. We don't have to do those. We have other ways. And so it's a bit fluid, but that assessment piece from our perspective and from the states really comes more at the end. We need to convert our teacher evaluation system to the new Danielson standards and the state model. Okay?
Thank you.
So the SLO goals, I think at one point it was 15%, now I think it's 20.
It's 20,
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
but you get to decide the ratio.
Yeah, pretty high stakes, so,
Oh, it is high stakes.
especially when we're looking at Smarter Balanced rolling in. And, well, are we doing it? Are we not doing it?
Well,
Make
that's-
up your mind, please.
Someone said to me the other day, oh, we're doing Smarter Balanced. I said, stay tuned. I haven't checked my email this
Right,
morning.
and now there's talk of them keeping kneecap for 4th and 8th grade science.
We've heard, well, they're going to keep science, but only at those, and then we've heard at the 11th grade level, we've always used kneecaps, and now there's a move to use SATs, which in my mind kind of makes sense if you're going to put bang for the buck. SATs are what kids are preparing with to go away to school, and,
Right.
it takes away double the testing time. That's one of the things that, when you do a lot of assessment, it takes away from that teaching time in the classroom.
And then we
Let
would,
me, go ahead, I'm sorry.
then we wouldn't have to pay for the SATs.
Well, I mean,
With the state of New Hampshire, I'm not sure where that would
Yeah.
go, but I think we've been in that place before.
But as an example, the state of Maine already uses SATs for their high school assessments statewide. How that gets paid, I don't know. The other thing that creates a good bit of anxiety in this, and I don't think any of us knew this when we were supporting going forward for this waiver, is that the waiver was only a 2-year waiver. And so the concept of SATs or PSATs or whatever doesn't fit into the current waiver structure. But they're starting to frame the next waiver. And so I don't think it's throwing out everything we're working on, but it can change.
The waves of waivers here cause issues because, first off, we form a budget a year ahead of when we actually use it.
Right.
So if you're looking at resources or professional development or anything like that, it's like, okay, I've got the money in there, and hopefully someone doesn't ask real particulars about how I'm going to use the money for PD, because I'm waiting for the New Hampshire DOE to tell me how I'm going to use that money for PD. And I don't have a crystal ball, but Dr. Hayes is correct, and Gail is correct as well in that they're always sending another memo after you've just absorbed the first one about, okay, now I'm going to go tell the staff, this is what we're doing. Because it's hard, I'm having them look at the Smarter Balanced practice test next week.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, okay. It'll be fun. We're going to make it fun.
Fun.
Fun. I'm going to serve chocolate.
Maybe cookies?
Maybe cookies.
Or cookies.
Yes,
Okay.
cookies.
While you're doing that, hit print screen a couple of times, will you, and bring us some snapshots? I mean, I think one of the things that would be really informative, and I know
See
it's
what some
hard.
questions I
It's
like
hard
that.
because
Yeah.
I don't know the right word, it's a progressive exam.
Correct. It's adaptive as we go
Adaptive
through,
exam.
like
So
NWEA
It's
was.
not like you can just jump in and say, here's a question. You
Yeah.
got to get into it, and
You
it's
have to do,
difficult.
I was hoping we could, my hope was, and for those people that are in the audience or at home, adaptive means it starts out on your level. So if there are 25 of us taking the exam, none of us are going to start on the same, we're going to start maybe in the first 2 questions, then it's just going to, everybody's going to go their own way. I was hoping I'd be able to pull, you could do a couple of math, you can do a couple of English language arts, you could do the writing piece. No. I sat for a while doing this, and I thought, okay, we all have to practice this, because you have to know where it's, we finally have technology in the district that allows us to be current. It's like so exciting. We don't get the death spiral for this. And now it's like, other things just seem to crop up. But that's where we are with where we're going on that piece. Gail, where do you want me to go next? Do you want me to talk about curriculum meetings?
Yeah, curriculum meetings
Okay.
and,
And then I'll move into the curriculum mapping piece.
perfect,
Okay.
thank you.
Curriculum meetings are based on the collective bargaining agreement. They are 1-hour meetings that in the CBA say an hour after school. I've kind of broadened that is, I also do meetings before school because there are teachers that have daycare issues and things like that. Or you might be teaching band at the elementary school and you're from the new junior, senior high. In the past, I did them by departments, which meant about 22 meetings in a month. And then you get up and it's May 1st, you got to start over again. They're designed to be an hour, and they can be about instructional practice. They can be mini PD. They can be discussions about what we're doing, where we're going, concerns that staff might have about that instructional practice, assessment measures using data. Amy's come to a couple of them to show folks different things on websites that they could be using for data, to explain protocols for using data, and any other topics supposedly that I deem appropriate. That's what it says in the CBA. So they're an hour either before or after school, or we have some departments that have gotten into a habit of requesting me to sit with them for 2 hours, which would make up 2 curriculum meetings, so they can have a length of time to either talk about curriculum or summer programming or something that pertains just to their department. 8 years of doing this, I've decided to change the format once again, because the goal for next year for myself and staff is vertical alignment. Vertical alignment covers about 30 different topics, from standards-based report cards to common assessments to goals, standards. It has a lot of components. The only way we can get that time to discuss, for example, if I were in social studies, but I want to know what the English department at the high school is doing for writing research reports. That's a time they're going to be able to sit down and do a lot of interdepartment and intergrade level kind of meetings. So, starting next year, they will meet, the junior senior high school will meet on the 3rd Monday of the month. The elementary school will meet the following 4th Monday of the month, except we did get a Monday holiday in there. And they will get that schedule, the teachers will get that schedule online, in paper form, May 19th, so they will have plenty of time. My goal is to give them, okay, if you have it before you leave school, when it comes to planning dentist appointments, eye doctor appointments, financial planner appointments, anything like that, you say, I can't go that Monday. Everybody will just stay after school that extra hour, and I can go from room to room. We can be doing things in the computers on curriculum. I'm hopeful that it's a really good use of time.
So the computer, that's the performance
Pathways? We'll get to that one.
Are they doing diary mapping
Yes.
as well?
We're going to look at that. I'll talk to that piece later. So curriculum meetings are 7 meetings a year if I go month by month. I don't do one in December. I don't do one in February because it's a short month when you have a week off. And I try not to do one in June. And that's how we set up the schedule. Any questions about curriculum meetings? We don't necessarily sit down and write curriculum math, but I guess that's my better point, that there are many parts of curriculum that just aren't writing curriculum. Okay, the next piece that I was asked to speak to was, how are we doing with putting our curriculum online? Currently, we use a mapping system, a curriculum mapping system that is online, that is secured by the State Department of Ed. It's called Curriculum Connector, and it's part of a series called Performance Pathways. Everybody has their own password. I don't get them. You have to be a teacher that's certified. I have instructors in the district that I've had to go to the DOE and get a specific password so that they can look at the mapping and help us out with it. It's a very secure password as long as you remember it. The problem, a couple of occasions, has come up that they don't remember it. And in the last year, the state has gotten much better with this website in terms of now you can just set your own password. Before, they would have to call either myself or Penny up in our office, and she would have to reset it. And of course, you wouldn't remember to do that until we were like 3 minutes into a workshop day. So we've gotten much better with that piece. What we seem to have trouble with, two things. You remember the death spiral I spoke to? When all of us decide to map on one day, it seems the DOE is not able to handle that much. So we get the first 10 or 15 people on, and they're going gangbusters. Number 16 gets on, and it's not good. The system kind of really slows down and doesn't work as effectively. That's been a frustration for the last 2 years. And I'm a proponent of, if you have a program, you need to review its progress. Is it working for us? Is it time heavy for the teachers? These teachers work long hours to begin with. To have them sit there and watch a computer screen that's going like this seems a little much, but haven't had a whole lot of ways to change it. Well then, the last early release day, I was doing a workshop up at the elementary school, and I didn't have my computer on to do the workshop, but I came back and I clicked on my email, and literally the screen just was on fire. I said, oh, this is not good. So I was on Performance Pathways, I've lost my maps, they're gone forever. I got one in French from Miss Smart. It was all over the place. So after I sat there and I said, okay, deep breaths, we've got to fix this. This is just crazy. And people had asked, you and other people in the community had asked, why isn't it curriculum online? You look at other districts and it's there, and you have every right to answer that question. I was hoping at some point we could take the pieces of the curriculum connector piece and put them up on the website. I am told, and I'm not a techie guru, I'm getting pretty good with Google Docs, but I'm not a guru yet, that takes a lot of space up on the website. So we've come up with 2 or 3 people are looking at a format from Google Docs that would allow us to do a curriculum map, and all those teachers who are watching are going, when she arrives in the parking lot tomorrow morning, we're going to be surprising her. I'm not putting it out there as we're making the huge change yet, but I think we need to find something that works for teachers that isn't so time-consuming. The program from the state, if you ask people, there are several benefits to it. One is you click on a little upside-down triangle and the standards appear magically and you only have to check them off. What I'm finding after 3 years of only checking them off is you don't read them as well as you could, I think. I think those discussions about what the new standards are and what they mean for learners make you plan a little differently. So the decision is not mine to make. The decision comes from probably you in terms of, do I get to pursue other ways to map? But more importantly, I'm looking for some guidance in terms of how to put it up on the website. I've researched 7 different districts. They all have a very personal way of putting their curriculum up. For example, at the high school, it's generally a syllabus format where you have what the content area is, what are the skills that they're learning, what might be the expectations, and now we see them as standards. Those are in there. Assessments, generally, not specific, are in there. Projects, which is really a big help for parents. If you look up on the website and you see, oh, they're going to do this Ben Franklin Invention Project. Oh, it's due tomorrow. Yes, okay. Now, you can get that from Infinite Campus, but if you had the whole year, you could kind of look at that. So we've looked at that format. However, as of yesterday afternoon, we have a teacher that was sitting with me helping me, and she's come up with a pretty good Google Doc that's close to what we could cut and paste from what we've already put into the curriculum connector piece from the state. The state, by the way, does not support this mapping piece. They take my check, but they don't support it. It's just part of the program. Oh, okay. I thought we were. Sorry. That's okay. I didn't know if that was like the TV thing where they tell you you're done and then you have to sit down.
They carry you away.
So I'm looking for some guidance there because I would love to have some teachers work on how to put it up on the website. At the elementary level, it becomes more a content, here is math, here are the skills you learn in math, and content area. These might be, you might have for the elementary school especially, what are the themes we use? What are the special projects? What are the field trips we use? Because I think those are important for parents to see by grade level. I'm waiting for Title II money to come in because that's my professional development money. And the budget so nicely put my teacher that used to be in that into the regular budget, so I will have money to spend on PD. I'd like to be able to spend some of that money for staff to do some of that work over the summer. But I kind of need your input as to, would you like me to work on some formats and get them to you?
Well, I know for me, I went looking.
Yes.
Because it's always fun to look on the websites and see what's going on. The only thing that laid out grade level curriculum that I could find was at the elementary school for computer curriculum. And it laid it out by essential outcome, the benchmark, specific skills.
I guess I need to know how much information do you want in there?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I was wondering about was, I know the question was asked, it was asked to candidates night.
Yes, I know, that's,
right. So,
I remember that.
and I tried to answer the question honestly then, and it could be a little bit, it could be a lot, depends on.
Well, that's it.
And so as we talk about format, every year, I'm still at the elementary level with my kids, right? But every year when we do report cards, at points throughout the year, teachers have handed me, in the area of mathematics, for instance, a
Yes.
great little cheat sheet where they put these checks and
the
pluses
progress
and
check, yes.
progress check. These are all the learning outcomes. These are the basics. Are we counting with decimals? Are we dividing by mixed fractions or mixed cases? Or I don't know. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Look, these are the things we're doing.
Right.
And don't worry about these. We aren't doing those yet. Okay. But there's at least a list. And so I see that as a parent, and I think, okay, that's cool. I don't know that it needs to be, I certainly am not looking for a document that tells me all of the units that they'll use or the teaching methods that they're going to use to instruct different kinds of learners. I simply, for instance, if I was a parent whose child was homeschooled in the kindergarten year or in a private kindergarten, and I wanted to know what was expected of my child in first grade, or maybe I kept my child out and think that they've really done a great job. What is it that you're going to cover in first grade? Oh, we've done all that already. My child knows all that. He's ready for second.
Right.
I need to champion my child and argue for that point. You guys are going to help with those decisions anyway, I know, but a very, at least in the beginning, a very, as simple as it can be, list of the outcomes that are expected in mathematics and language arts.
And we can do that with Common Core.
And, okay, so with Common Core, we're going to get there. That's going to help. I know with New Hampshire Career Readiness, career and college, career, college
That
and
too.
career ready standards, anything that I think we can do to get there so that we can at least give a snapshot of this is what's going to happen in the fifth grade year for your child in these subject areas. This is what's going to happen in sixth grade mathematics. And I think the concept about a syllabus-based endeavor maybe at the upper grades, that makes perfect sense. Because
like
that's how I know as a student at the secondary level, at the grad, at the collegiate level, this is what I'm going to learn. This is what I'm going to cover. Here are the outcomes. And so, because today, my question is, today, if I'm a brand-new teacher that comes into the district and I'm going to teach at whatever level, there's got to be something.
Well,
that-
generally, you have a curriculum map to hand them.
Okay.
What happens is that if a teacher leaves that didn't complete a map, and some people are still working on them at the junior, senior high school,
Yep.
especially if we had new courses this year, because if you were anything like how I organized, we wrote it out on several pieces of paper before because you want it, it's not something you want to keep going in and redoing. But they're in different levels of progression. Some completely done, up to date through the end of the year. And because we're in block scheduling, some are not done until the end of this quarter because they're not done with this quarter. And what it has promoted is really good discussions about pacing, what kind of, for example, we have skills and we have content. We had a big discussion in junior, senior high school about what is content, what is skills. And I, coming from that background, I said skills are verbs, contents are nouns. That was an interesting discussion. We needed more chocolate that day. But I think they're in a good place for that. But my point is, for most of those people at the junior, senior high school level, a syllabus format works for them because that's how they see their course.
Mhm.
At the elementary, I may have to go just in terms of, at the end of grade 4, your child will be exposed. I don't mean to
I
use
can
that.
statements or?
statements, yeah.
Yes.
But I really would, I would like people to look at the computer curriculum, because it was laid out in such a way, by grade level at least, that
Where is it from, Gail? Can you say that?
it's from
Can
the
you-
elementary
It's,
school website. It said the essential outcome. Students will use current hardware and software efficiently
Oh,
and
yes.
effectively.
Okay, I know what you're
It
speaking
aligned with
of
the
now.
benchmark and the skills. So
And that's one of those things because, and I don't mean to interrupt you, when we're doing standards-based report cards, that brings it very clearly into what are the benchmarks we need? You know, we start with a pretest, what are the benchmarks? It's quarter 3, it's number 2. Where are we in terms of getting to the end of whatever that grade is, if you see what I'm saying? And because we have a math progress sheet at the elementary school, you see very clearly where you're going and where you've been. So that is my goal, to really look at the mapping piece. Not that I don't do it all day long in certain areas, but I'm a little discouraged with the state piece, and I just want to take, not the easiest, not the quickest road, but I want to be effective because we have a lot on teachers' plates.
Yeah.
You know, that Chinette plate, actually used to be a little plate, but now it's a Chinette
It's getting bigger.
dinner plate.
the charger.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
When that first grade teacher starts next year, and will we give that person a curriculum map? And is it an empty map? Like, is there actually a document?
Oh, no, there are
or a
things
series
in
of
it.
documents?
No, we don't give it to her empty. She has the option of getting that and an empty one.
In an empty one. So-
Every teacher has that
So not
option.
every teacher's map is going to look the same at this,
We have what
at
we
the
call
fifth.
core maps.
Okay,
So, for example, if you were, we do this especially in the junior, senior high where you have algebra.
okay.
Here are the core skills for algebra, no matter what level. And then
Put that on the website.
put that one on the website, the
Yep.
core one? You only want the core one, okay.
That's like, I mean, I guess, I just mean like, that's a good tool. Let's look at that because
Okay.
don't go nuts, for me. Let's not go nuts trying to create
Right, no.
deliverables for public consumption that way. But where there are documents that say to a teacher, you got 36 divided by 2 is 18, you got 18 weeks, wrap this up. You got to get from him to him, from here to there.
And that
If that's a
goes-
document that at least gives them a guide about how they've got to consider their lesson plans and how they've got to pace their own progress with the class, that's the kind of document. And because even with just that document, if that's just algebra, you're going to have 100 plus of them before you get done just at the junior, senior high school, right, with syllabuses. And so I would not want this to become an exhaustive process, but to the extent that when I walk in and say, this year I'm going to teach fifth grade, or this year I'm going to teach algebra to eighth graders, or this year I'm going to teach whatever, there's got to be something that at least gives you a push. And
We
even if
call
that's
them
a,
core maps.
even if that's a print screen,
Right.
I mean, I think that's, again, support teachers in Common Core and college and career readiness standards, support them in continuing to pay attention, to consider new methods of instruction to help communicate to diverse learners that information or that material. Let's not waste a lot of time trying to create documents that we can put on the web. Let's just poke it with the
Right.
simplest, easiest things that we've got that can start helping the public have a sense of what it is that we try to accomplish, and parents have a sense where that's important, and encouraging parents that if they really have a question about what's going to be covered in school this year, sit with your teacher and ask. And the
But-
teacher will work hard to.
But will the parents be able to go on there and look at that core?
If
Yeah,
they can't look at the current maps because they're password protected.
Right.
But if we come up with a format, then they go up on the website and anybody could see them. I mean, Gail and I'll tell you, we've been on other people's websites to look, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
But they're public.
They are
Yeah,
public.
they're public.
And why reinvent the wheel?
If it's already out there,
Someone's already,
and we
done
talked
a good
about that
job.
when we did college and career ready
Yep.
standards, because we weren't at the same point in New Hampshire that places like New York or places, Connecticut, they'd already done a lot of this legwork for us, and they're more than willing to share. I mean, we spoke to teachers, we were at a convention, and we spoke to teachers from New York, and they're like, oh, we're so done with that. And I'm like, oh, we're just starting with this. But they were very helpful. They told us shortcuts and places to go and things to work with. It's been great. It does allow for network, I will say that, the college and career readiness standards. You can talk to people about them and get a lot of information.
So Pat, I'm wondering if maybe, if we have when we have a follow-up meeting, if you wouldn't mind showing us the difference between a team's core map versus a teacher's diary map.
I can do that.
Because a diary map is just the teacher saying,
Personal.
this is what I would like to do, and these are my resources I have within the district or in my classroom.
This is where you really see a teacher's style.
Right.
I mean, I had
Their
someone the other day
language.
say, oh, I didn't put periods in. And I went, oh, my God, okay.
Yeah.
You know, and sat there and followed.
Some do it in narrative, some do it in bullets.
Right.
Some do it in bullets.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No,
But I don't,
it's real
I mean, I
personal.
think it would be cool for us to look at it, but I don't think that, now you just framed it, you've called it a diary map as opposed to a core map.
Yeah.
I think core map is what we might be looking for
Yeah.
public consumption.
Yeah.
I
Diary
can
map-
show you
It would be an
mine.
external map
Right.
and an internal map,
Right.
because you have the external map for the public who just wants to basically know, they don't want to know every project they're
No.
going to do in every class. Obviously, that could change based on the teacher.
Well, and I
or
think
the
part of
day.
that's an infinite
they
campus, I
just
believe.
want
Maybe there
a
is some there.
roundabout explanation. These are the courses we provide. This is what we do in them. These are the things we offer our children. That's all they want.
Okay.
And then, of course, your teachers would have their internal maps, which
Right.
would, express
More
their
specific.
creativity and
Right.
what it is they'd like to do as individual teachers.
So you're looking for direction from us to,
I think I just got a little from Gail, so I'm.
All right, so that's what we're gonna do.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
And I think it's manageable. Most of that work has already been done, at least in certain departments. I know that people are finishing up. So if you could provide us with maybe a few samples of the core maps, and then if any teachers would be willing to let us see
I
their
can show you
language.
mine.
Right, or any other teachers too.
And
'cause
and
it'd
last
be
time
neat.
we had, we had other people who, I printed off their maps so you could see the difference.
And obviously, there are probably some core things that aren't included in the core, like they just introduced the senior seminar.
Right.
So obviously, you'd add that in and just,
And it's funny that it changed just in doing it first quarter to the next quarter, we did senior seminar, because you learn and reflect on, oh, I should have tweaked that a little, I should have spent more
Absolutely.
time on that, yeah. The snow days did not help. Some people are on we need more time.
Yeah.
Not that we want you to add more days to the schedule, but yes. What else can I answer for you?
I think that, at least for me, I think that
You asked about-
sounds great.
you're having a problem with the state.
Oh, the website is just horrendous.
So are you looking to
I'm looking.
not use that any longer?
I guess I
and-
need some input is, should I investigate changing the format to a Google Doc?
that's something that you,
I think,
Jim.
We have talked,
And
you know,
that's
we-
what we hire you as a curriculum.
I see.
That's
I
where
see.
I mean, that's not any of our expertise.
Okay.
I don't.
I
believe.
can-
I know, we know what the end in mind is. The end in mind is to have something that is easily
Yes.
accessible through our website that people can see.
Okay, I can work on
K to
that and get
12.
back to you.
And the state model just does not, after we've tried, but it just does not service us.
It sounds like all of us have been trying to get I just said that to Pat, I'm like, I can't get on it.
Yeah.
So if you could do something that parents can go on and look,
And find it and
Right.
be,
And maybe it's a Google Docs, but maybe it's something with an expense. We don't know, but we need to find what's the right vehicle to
what's
deliver that.
the least amount of extra, I guess, work
Right.
and time and money. The other part to that is, and I encourage parents, once we do
Yeah,
put
and they
things
will.
like that up,
They will,
if you have a
yeah.
question about, and Mr. Lenny addressed that a bit, if you see something up there, call me, call the teacher, email the teacher. Infinite Campus at the junior, senior high is an excellent tool for getting in touch with teachers, and you could always ask your own child at home for clarification, because usually they have it, they just aren't always forthcoming, but until you ask the question.
isn't it on the report card as well? I mean, I guess
Is
I've
what on your report
never,
card?
like, kind of the curriculum, what they're
The
going to
math
be doing.
pieces generally.
Yeah.
Because we've spent 3 years perfecting that piece. And we're just starting the reading piece. We're in good shape with the reading, actually, so. Standards-based report card is next. That'll be the next thing you'll see from the teachers at the elementary school. We've got to package that up so that you can see it. The other piece I have is, because I've really spoken a long time, perhaps you want to think about, in terms of next year, I know we're not done with this year, but next year, would you be more comfortable with my coming, let's say, once a month, and doing a curriculum kind of presentation? It could be something that's going on in a classroom, a new unit, a new course. Would that be of interest to you? I guess that's, again, your decision.
I think it would be very helpful for us to see as follow-up discussions.
Yeah, good
What's
progress.
been going on? What's the professional development? What's the progress? Are we doing core maps? How does that look? How does it transfer? And even having teachers come as well.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If we,
Yeah.
especially if they had something really kind of new and,
Yeah,
you know.
we talked about that, and I still like that idea. And it makes them, like, they get to be heard from us.
And
then
they're
the
very
public
good at
can see.
speaking, so they probably should have that voice. I will tell you, at the elementary school, we'll be using Dr. Carol Tolman. I referred to her in one of the curriculum meeting notes. She did some work with reading interventions, and at the elementary school, we want to clarify if we're going in the right direction. She's offered some PD throughout next year. She's coming on May 28th, actually, to the elementary school. I'm very excited that she's offered to come. She lives in New Hampshire, so she's not charging us as much, which is really nice. So we do have that going forward, and Mahesh will be back, and so that's where we are. Any other questions?
The only other thing I would propose is, at some point, I know we made some major changes. You made, I think you made reference to it. Could have just been in my head because I wanted to ask, but.
Did you want me to make that?
We made some changes so that we could move Ms. Rossi around and give her a
Yes.
data role.
Oh, the data person.
Don't hesitate at some point to help extol the virtues of the decision that we made.
Oh.
And have her come back maybe with a teacher or two that she's worked with at either or both levels, and have them, with your support, kind of cooperatively say, hey,
That's a great idea.
this is
agree,
what the data, this is what having somebody
how we-
focused on data can bring back to the teachers so that they can be informed and excited and, you know what I mean?
Just the timeliness of using Amy this year has been huge, you know, especially we all know NECAP reports, for those of you that are in the audience. We take them in the fall, and on a good year, we get them back in February. So those pieces of data are somewhat outdated when we get them, but with Amy, we don't even, we look at that data the day one when it comes in. She and I spent a whole morning here just picking apart pieces and talking. And then when, she's really gotten into a format of what we need to talk about and how to talk about it. I know we are doing placement kind of conversations in the next couple of weeks, and she's come up with a schedule of what every grade level should have for data when we have those discussions, and that saves teachers time.
Right.
By getting that data ahead of time. But we're learning, everybody's learning, this is what the numbers say, but what do those numbers really say, and what changes can we make?
And how
So-
does that drive your instruction?
Oh, it's huge. It's just, clearly what we did there wasn't working so well, or, oh, they all got it, yay! That kind of thing, so.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, superintendent search process. So I alluded to that in my chair report. I spoke with Ted Comstock, based on the direction from the board, gave them some ideas in regards to potential interim candidates. It seemed at the time our direction was a full-time candidate. Interim, yep. With some similarities to the facility issues to New Hampshire, what's been going on in terms of state building aid, the size of our district, the needs. So what he has agreed to do is to extend that search out to people within the New Hampshire School Board Association. Once he collects available candidates, resumes, information like that, he'll give me a chat, and we'll discuss how do we facilitate looking at those resumes as a board, and then devising a process to speak with those people to hire, interview.
So do we form, We're not forming a committee for the interim.
No. I don't think so. I don't think there's enough time to do that. However, I think there was enough interest of the board to open it up when we begin a full search for a permanent superintendent. But, we're going to need to discuss timelines and things like that as well.
Did he give an ETA on when he could have some names for us, or?
No, we spoke, I think we spoke on Tuesday of last week.
I'm gonna start talking if you guys don't mind for 30 seconds.
No,
and
that's
you can
fine.
have a copy of it, and so can you.
This looks like more than 30 seconds.
Well, I'll be fast. Listen, I have very little confidence that we can find, I know that one of the things that was suggested by the superintendent was that we should have this conversation publicly, so I tried to put some notes together so we could do that. From my perspective, I have little confidence that we can find a dynamic educational leader for this district at this time of year. Sadly, at this point, we would primarily be choosing from those candidates who have been unsuccessful in other searches. And specifically, I can share, and this is just anecdotal stuff that I've heard from reasonably reliable sources, that in its last attempt, Dover got half a dozen applications, 6 for the superintendency, and started over, threw them out. Franklin got 3, threw them out, started, and many of these districts are already chasing interims because of that situation. I agree. I really believe that we need to find a solid interim for 14-15. I think that position needs to be full-time or near to full-time. Not every interim that's out there is somebody that wants to work a 5-day, 8-hour kind of gig, and so we may have to compromise a smidge, but I don't think we want to compromise much. We have a lot on the plate, so we need all the support we can get. I really think that the interim needs to focus on 4 things primarily. Obviously, an interim would be superintendent, would have to focus on everything, but I would encourage focus on, number 1, making student learning a priority, giving all possible support to our teachers in their efforts to address the Common Core and the New Hampshire College and Career Ready standards. 2, provide leadership and stability to our district leadership, meaning the other administrators that are here. We are in the midst of some change in multiple positions, and so I think the interim that would be really important. 3, we want them to support the continued efforts of the school board and the district to address our facility challenges. And 4, we need that interim to work with the school board to plan for an effective search for a superintendent. I'm open to that interim choosing to become a candidate in our ultimate search for a superintendent. I think that's an important nuance we should talk about, as long as their intention is communicated openly to the school board prior to the meaningful elements of the search. And by that I mean, they certainly can be a part of the effort to help us write up materials, define a job scope, what are the priorities that we want in a new superintendent, blah, blah, blah. But at the point that we start advertising and we start conversing about that, they need to declare the candidacy real early so that we don't have somebody that at some point leaves the public feeling that it was a baited process, right? I do not feel it's in the best interest of the school district right now that we find an interim from within our current employee base. I understand the district's already been contacted or has already contacted the School Board Association, and I appreciate the work that Gail's doing for finding assistance and identifying candidates. I think we can also reach out and find possible candidates through a simple advertisement and word of mouth. It's not that big a state, and the circle of folks that might be available for interim are pretty well defined, really. And I'm confident that this school board can, with the support of existing staff, conduct interviews and negotiate terms consistent with our budgeted resources to complete the hiring of the interim. I would not support spending significant dollars with School Boards Association to have an attorney from Concord come down here and facilitate what is a very straightforward process. We hire people all the time. This is a 1-year candidate, and I think that with the support of the folks that are already here in the district, we have the skills and the manpower to do this. We need a candidate pool, but once we have a candidate pool, I think we're off and running. And so it sounded, again, like we were looking for a public conversation and a motion. So I would move, and you can make amendment as you like. I'd move that the school board seek a full to nearly full-time or nearly full-time interim superintendent for 14-15. I further move that we place advertisements on edjobsnh.com. We alert New Hampshire school administrators, School Boards Association, the education leadership programs at UNH and Southern New Hampshire, and/or any others that we think, and alert them of our intention to hire an interim. Sometimes they have links to people that are looking and are available. Further, that the chair appoint 2 of our members to work with members of the staff to facilitate getting the materials, making sure that they are complete packets, and then disseminating them to the board, scheduling interviews, collecting references as need be. again, working with the support of the staff. I don't know that, we can't ever, all 5 of us, just jump together without posted public meetings, sit and review resumes. So a couple of us can work together as a subcommittee, if you want, to try to get that stuff all organized. I'm not suggesting that 2 of us should usurp the responsibility or the authority of all 5. I just think that a couple of people can help streamline this, working with staff to clean stuff up and say, wow, this person isn't even certified. There's certain things that, you may see in a candidate pool that you could clean up pretty quickly. And I further suggest that this be accomplished with the greatest haste in order to place an interim superintendent as soon as possible after June 1st, 2014. And that assumes that there's no chance that we'll do it by June 1st, but by June 10th, and I don't know what the superintendent's plans will be as we march towards 30 June, but if there is the possibility for any overlap with an interim, that would be great. So the sooner after June 1st we can make it happen, the sooner Jim could be saying, this is over here, you're going to want that file before the year is out, et cetera, because there's some real information sharing that can happen there, so.
I'll second that, and then we can discuss it? Yep. Okay, I'll second that. And I love the fact that I have almost the same list.
Do you? Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
great.
that's exciting. So here's my concern. And I remember we discussed this, and I can't remember the details, but how do we weed out the ones that we don't, that obviously haven't worked for 6 years? There might be a reason they haven't worked for 6 years. Is that through the DOE, or who weeds those out? We had this discussion, I can't remember.
So part of it, I think, is as you establish a small group, there are phone calls that can be made. The superintendent can help with those if we like. The association, I mean, there are only, what, 89 school SAUs in the state of New Hampshire right now, which means there are something close to 89 seated superintendents. There aren't a ton of them that are laying around that are available to do this work otherwise, right? Who at this point would say, sure, I got next year off, I'd like to come. So I think as you look at those things that come through, if there are questions, concerns that are quickly jump out of the documentation, you can look at the history and say, this person worked for such and such, and this person worked for such and such, and you can make some phone calls.
Yeah.
We can do that through any number of channels, depending on what their background is. The New Hampshire School Administrators Association, most of the superintendents in the state are members of the association. Their histories are known. There are people that you can call on for references. There are people who have served us here as interims in the past who have retired from the area, who know a lot about the area and a lot about these people. Jim's been sitting at the table with these people now for the last 4 years, so you can look through pretty quickly and see some of that. Beyond that, I think, I would not be suggesting the 2 people should vet this and try to bring us a list of 2 or 3. I don't think we should do that. I think reasonably, we need to prepare the materials, and then individually, we can all take a look at it and then have a conversation about them. We may or may not want to have somebody facilitate us for that conversation. Depends on what we see in this stack of candidates. If we see absolutely nothing or some really weird stuff or are confused in general, then I think we'd want to look for somebody to help facilitate and give us a little guidance. But
So if we received like a number of candidates and this 2-person board, so to say, goes through them, we don't necessarily not present all of the candidates to the board. It's just that they would be noted, these are the ones that we do not recommend based on these reasons.
Here's the reasons.
So you would still actually get to, the whole board would still get to view those candidates.
Yep.
It would just sort of give reasons why they were.
this person's been working at Walmart for the last 10 years. They
Right.
were superintendent a long time ago, and we're not
Or
really
this
sure
is
why
their-
they want to do this now.
This is their first year.
Right. Yeah.
That makes sense,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that way you could just read the notes,
Right.
see whoever did the research, what they found, how they feel, why they came to that conclusion.
So do we need to, through the direction of the board, we've had a motion, a second discussion. Do we need to further the discussion, or are we ready to vote on this motion? And then anyone interested?
I'm good with that, and I say putting it out is a good idea
Yeah.
everywhere we can at this point.
Is that something that we can ask?
Yeah, I've mentioned it to you before. Penny will certainly be your
Okay.
communications person and all that. She does that routinely for all our positions. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Any other discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So if anyone is interested in being, from the board, part of a 2-member team, will you kindly let me know? if you're interested, maybe email me. I can only
It doesn't
imagine.
go without, it goes without saying, I guess. I'd love to help. I think that I can offer something, but
I wouldn't mind helping either.
there's lots of roles for us all to fill, so.
In terms of spreading the word about this position, I know it wasn't part of your motion, but it's obviously part of your text, items 1 through 4. Is there consensus here that we should market, these are priorities that we're looking for leadership in a candidate? You know what I'm saying? You don't just simply,
I put that out to you guys because that was why I provided those 4, because for me, I thought if somebody said, well, what's going to be important this year, but those 4 will be important.
because you put, superintendent, interim superintendent, and would focus on these priorities or something, give them some sense of the kind of direction that is important in the school district.
Understanding that they still have to supervise staff, they still have
Yeah.
to, they got to be superintendent.
The
but-
routine part of the job,
Right.
but priorities beyond that.
So maybe one priority could be knowledge of facility issues.
Well, and so it says.
Right.
You got to support the continued efforts of the board and the district to address the
Right,
facility
so
challenges.
that should definitely be one that we adopt as a requirement.
I mean, is there
Work
the
with the
roles
school
of
board.
this, of the superintendent anyways?
Unless you intend on
Yeah,
applying
we'd
for
have
the
to,
position.
yeah, we'd also have to put in there, because I think that's a key point of saying, interim candidates will be considered when we go for a permanent position. I don't know how to say that just yet.
Work with the school
but, yeah.
board to plan for an effective superintendent
Yeah.
search unless,
Right.
And again,
unless said candidate,
Right.
wants to throw his
I think
hat
when
in
you
the ring,
choose,
so
to-
to
when
say.
you, when you choose to work with an interim, that's going to be, that's an important question up front.
Right.
But I think the question is nuanced because some districts, some boards may say, if you're going to be a candidate, then you can't be involved in this process. You can't sit here with us and brainstorm, what do we think the criteria are for a good superintendent, if you think you're going to apply for it. I disagree. I think as long as we feel like we've got a good interim and a good relationship with an interim, the interim can sit right here with us and talk about, here are the characteristics of the superintendent that we need, and can help work us through that process, which I expect we'll be doing this fall, because we'd want to look this winter, not next spring, you know what I mean? We don't want to do it in May, we
Right.
want to do it in November, we want to start advertising. So we want to, or December, something like that. But again, I'd look to the superintendent to call on their best experience and resources that they can leverage to figure out what the best cycle is to launch into, so on and so forth. But if they can sit with us and help us through it, that's great. But as soon as we've packaged it and we put it out, then I think they have to take a step back. They can't be involved in reference checking and any of that, because we just want to make sure that it's a fair process.
Okay. Yeah, these-
Some people would prefer to hire an interim who's got no interest, because then they can hold our hands and be a part of it. They can sit right here and have a vote if you want. I don't think we're going to need that. I think we've got enough.
We might find we get an interim that we really like.
We might.
That would stay?
That would be nice.
Yep.
Right.
Not gonna lie.
After
So-
dealing with us?
Do we need, do we need to add more to this?
I think those, I mean, how many, I think those 4 pretty much cover most of it, right? I mean,
Jim, do you see a need
Pretty
to
broad.
Well, it's
add
because,
any
and there's.
specific language to this?
I don't. I mean, I think it expresses the priorities you should be looking for, so it makes good sense to me. And you don't want to have something that's overly,
yeah, that's
You
what
know,
you
Because
would
there's
get
a role
into
of
in
the
the
there's
Let's
interview.
be
the
succinct.
role of the
Yeah.
superintendent anyways, which
because
I had part of my
many
list as well.
superintendents that look for interim think they're, that the primary role is to come in and just steer the ship and not dabble into all new initiatives and, I'm really into, early childhood education, and so I'm going to create a whole new center. And, they don't create new initiatives generally, but if you have priority areas, it's important that they know at the beginning that you're looking for leadership in those priority areas.
I'm good with them as they are.
You good with them as they are?
I am, yeah.
All right,
I'm good.
let me try and draft something, and then I'll just blast it out to you guys, and you give me feedback. How's
That's
that?
outstanding.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next for programs, elementary school principal search process.
Similarly, you need to have, although I know you've done consideration in non-public, but you really need to have that public discussion of where you want to go with that. Obviously, in my superintendent's report and in a previous communication with you, I truly believe the best candidate is in our school already, and that's Assistant Principal Deb Raffo, and that would be my recommendation. However, as I said in my notes, although it's not unusual in my experience, it's probably unusual in your experience to simply not have a search and hire from within, and so you need to give some thought to that. And if you're willing to do that, then I think a good step would be to interview the candidate and be comfortable with her. And if you're not, then you need to state that, and we move forward in whatever direction you choose.
What are we required to do? Are we required to have a full-out search?
You're not required to do a
There
full-out
isn't any
search.
parameters
Not
that
at
we-
all, not at all. I mean, I've hired, in my years, I've hired several principals right out of the ranks without a search. I went from assistant superintendent to superintendent without a search even. So, so that does, it's not uncommon in my experiences, but I think it is uncommon here because of your size and the frequency with
Right.
which you hire people.
Well,
But
I
that's-
know when we discussed as a board, the consensus was to do a full principal search.
Yeah.
And the board asked me to report that to you, which I did during April vacation.
Right, I
So-
know. And similar, though, to the superintendent search, that was a discussion that wasn't held in public. I think you need to,
do it-
you need to just, vet the same points, priority, why it's your priority to do that in public, so people understand what you're doing, and then similarly, take a motion to whatever direction you're going in.
I think with all the things we have on our plate right now, if we have someone who's already in that building and been in that building for so many years, knows it probably better than anyone we're going to interview, I'd rather do a search for an assistant principal personally than do a search for a principal.
And this is where I'm thinking stability. Because we're at such an upheaval right now with everything happening, I was looking more for stability in that building and somebody who knows the families, who knows the school, who knows the personalities within our school, and knows that we're looking for, knows how to run that building because basically she's been doing it. So that is my concern.
I know we discussed, we discussed availability during the summertime. And for me, it was a concern, having a principal, in my opinion, should be in the building during the summertime to manage incoming students, special needs, scheduling, any issues, conflicts, supplies coming in. And I know that there was a discussion about having an assistant principal that we would possibly hire come in and do all of that. And my concern is that if we have someone who's coming into the district and does not have any prior knowledge about the inner workings of that elementary school, but to have that person in charge of all of those things during the summertime, it just doesn't seem like a good move to do that. I would think that the principal would and should be there during the summertime to facilitate all of those major decisions. Having someone come in new as the assistant principal and doing all of that, I don't think that's best practice.
I don't think she personally has to physically be in the building. I mean, she can delegate those things and be in close contact with that assistant to get
Well-
those things done.
Or do we ask her, maybe there's a plan in place, too? I mean, that would be part of the interview process. We can say, well, what are you looking for during the summer? And then we could understand it more.
I have worked with principals with both year-round and like 210-day contracts, and the way that it would play out if she were on a 200-day contract, she's got school year responsibilities, but she's got additional days to work. And so she would pick her time throughout the summer, I'm sure, to do check-ins and things like that. I don't think she would
I
just
don't think she's just going to leave the
drive
last day
away
of
and
school
say, I'll see you in
never-
August. So
No.
I think there'd be that experienced hand that'd be working with an assistant principal who would be there all year. At least that's the concept that I would recommend. So-
I thought that the assumption was that it wasn't that we wouldn't consider it, it was just that we also felt like we should open it up as well. That was my
I'm a
understanding.
little,
Well,
I'm just,
that was
Yeah.
the consensus at the time.
I feel bad, and I'm kind of disappointed and embarrassed a little bit. We went non-public, so the public should know, we went non-public, not because we wanted to have a conversation about a public matter privately, but because we were going to discuss the merits or demerits of offering this job without a search to an internal candidate, without having a conversation about that internal candidate in public. So now we've just had the conversation about that internal candidate in public session when, and everybody's entitled to change their minds, there was clear consensus where I'm standing, 5-0. We didn't take a vote because we didn't need a vote. Clear consensus that you would go back and support and suggest to the superintendent that for lots of reasons, spoken some tonight and some not spoken yet tonight, but we could air it all out if you like, we just didn't think it was going to be the right move for the individual or for the district to just hand that position, especially if we were talking about an abbreviated contract for a principal and a full-year contract for a deputy. And so I got to say, I mean, I think the reason we went non-public has now kind of been lost, but I think, you know, we had that conversation, and I don't think that it's a bad district. I think it's a great district. I think we have, I mean, I've said this here, we're lucky to hold on to some people for a long time, and we've held on to that assistant principal for a long time, which is great. I think we've done so because, and here's one more thing we haven't shared yet tonight, that assistant principal hasn't really been interested in the job in the past. And although the superintendent has brought forward a suggestion that maybe this would be a great idea, there's been no overture made by an assistant principal that they want that job. And that right now you should give me that job and I can lead this and I can make this happen. My guess is, without having anything, and I'm saying this in public session, haven't talked to the individual and don't know, but I bet that individual will be a powerful resource to a new principal for an extended period of time, hopefully as extended as we can get. And if that person really wanted to be principal, would have been so before, or would have stood up and said, give it to me now. And maybe that's what has been said to the superintendent. Maybe that person has come forward and said, enough's enough, I've watched an open door, people come and go, and I want that gig, I can do it. If so, I think it would have been presented to us differently, or should have been. There could be a letter here from that person saying, make it happen, here's what I am envisioning. And so for all of that reason, I really think that the principalship at Newmarket Elementary is a huge opportunity for a school administrator in New Hampshire. Knowing you got a veteran assistant there, remarkable faculty, strong resources up and down the halls. Our kids are among the most motivated and inspiring that any administrator could want to work with. And I know that schools have challenges, and I won't suggest that NES is any different right now, but I think that we're already a couple of weeks behind and need to get going because a good person is out there ready and interested to come here and take on this challenge and work with these kids, supported by a strong veteran administrator in that building who knows the ropes and can really help make this happen. I'd move that we seek a full-time permanent principal for Newmarket Elementary School. We should explore the availability of our veteran assistant principal to assist, as well as other district administrators who have been strongly involved with that building and with that program as appropriate, to assist with orientation and transition so that we can make that as successful as possible over the summer. And we should endeavor to fill that as soon as possible after the 15th of June. Again, because the opportunity that might exist to have somebody in here for even a day or two while the superintendent is still here for some crossover, while the assistant principal is still here before going out on routine summer break, would be of some value.
Do I hear a second?
You don't have to do it that way, but I give you the motion so we can keep
I'll
going.
second that. I mean, like I said, it's my understanding that we were going to open it up to everybody. It doesn't mean the application still can't be made, but as Nate said, we haven't really had any, I really want it.
And I guess
So-
my yes,
Yeah, I want to address that because that really is not fair to ascribe that necessarily to her. My role as superintendent is to nominate the best candidate. I suppose what I could have done is come here tonight with a nomination and said, she's the best candidate, I don't need to look anywhere else. And I did not do that, and I explained the reasons why. In terms of what she didn't do in the past and is willing to do now, it has everything, I think, to do with the experience of the last year and a half, especially this year, but both year and a half, and has been doing yeoman's work to keep that school on track and as administratively supportive as possible, and it's been an over and above effort. And so I think she realizes that, my God, I've been doing a lot of it already, and the time is now.
I don't think anyone's...
So I didn't encourage her to write a letter or anything of that sort. I just want to make that clear, and that's all.
I don't think anyone is discrediting the amount of amazing work that she's done.
No, I don't think that either. I didn't mean to say that.
Overall,
Yeah.
we had an opportunity to discuss in non-public. The consensus at the time from the members of the board was that we were going to open it up to a full search.
And she can
With
apply.
the understanding that she should apply.
Yes.
I get that.
Okay, and
Then the
I,
direction was given for me to report to you that we were going to do a full search.
Yes,
So I guess I'm just a bit
I
confused now that it's May 1.
And here's why. Because you need to have this discussion that you're having now in public and make the decision in public so that all of the community understands your position. You can't do that in non-public. And Nathan's right. The only reason you went in there is because you were discussing an individual and we wanted to protect the reputation. But when you listen to what came out of there, and obviously what you just said, there is no, remember why you go in, the words are that could negatively affect the reputation of an individual other than a school board member. That qualification doesn't really exist and hasn't existed in this conversation. So that means the whole conversation just needed to play out again for the public and for your duty to the public, and then why you're going in whatever direction you're going in. That's all it is.
and I also want to say that I think that when we discussed it non-public and it was brought up, we weren't sure of her intent, that she really wanted that. And I think I was made aware that she does. And that's why I was able to say, you know what, let's rethink this, let's revisit it again, and that's why we're discussing it again. I would like to keep the stability in that school. So that's my reasoning for saying I wouldn't mind moving to nominate Deb Raffo.
Well, we have a motion.
Is-
We had a second. We're having a discussion, so
For public consumption, let me ask, is there a concern that we won't have that stability if we search for a
With
principal and hire
everything
one?
we're doing right now, Nathan, with a superintendent search, with a facilities committee, why would we not use the resources that we already have and a person who's been doing the job pretty much already, and then get a really super duper assistant principal? I mean, you yourself were saying that, you want to have that veteran assistant principal work in the process. Have that veteran assistant principal be the principal.
Then she can take a 260-day contract and do the job.
That's up to you. That's your
No,
choice.
not my choice.
To decide if that's how you want to vote. This is my personal opinion. I don't have to agree.
I think the consensus when we met was that we would open
I've
it up
heard
to
you
a
say
full.
that twice, and I think what we're saying here is that we've changed our minds.
So then I think we need to take a vote on this first motion and second
Go ahead.
in regards to finding a full permanent principal for Newmarket Elementary School.
Excuse me, when you say full, you mean full-time?
Full-time, that was a
Full-
typo.
Full-time, so a full
Okay.
search for a
Full-time.
principal for Newmarket Elementary School. So that would mean a full search.
I understand.
Which
Okay.
means she could apply for the job.
I understand that, yes.
Hopefully, yes.
That's right.
All right, so all those in favor of this motion of opening up to a full search signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
We'll get that going right away.
All right. Fire and life safety update.
And I already gave that as part of my superintendent's
Okay.
report. Yep, we're good.
All right. Discussion about Mr. Evangelista's presentation.
Well, I'll plead the little bit of ignorance that I have with this is that I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I didn't see the presentation, although I did meet with Matt. I didn't get to see the board meeting yet because for whatever reason it was really delayed getting online, so I just never got to it. And but it was my understanding that as a follow-up to that, there was more discussion or formation of further questions that you folks wanted to engage in?
I think the presentation was outstanding, and I love that there were lots of new ideas, and I think it's a resource for us that's going to be huge as we march down the path. It was so funny, the nuance that sometime is left. The newspaper reported how was the newspaper reported? The newspaper said, and the board asked Mr. Evangelista if he would come back. Well, heck, we just got done talking, there's a lot on the plate. I don't know that we've really had a chance to sift through that and formulate a whole lot. The question that was asked was, will you come back? Because I think we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to ask questions when we had a chance to discuss it more and formulate it. There was, the most important thing for me was, and I think it was captured tonight in some of the comments that were made by the public, there was a willingness to dare to deal, to dare to dream, to be creative. I didn't say it that night. I'd love to say it now. There are some things I hope that we are able in our process to contemplate, like creative and flexible space. The 3-story addition that we talked about was just, more double-loaded corridors. It's a hallway with classroom. And I think we would have built that 50 years ago, and I hope that we can try to find a variation on that. I'm sure that Matt would say, hey, inside the 4 walls and the roof, you can do whatever you want, floor by floor. The creativity can be in there. Those are the things I hope that we can work in. But the idea of trying to utilize the space that we have there and some or all of the resources that are in that building, I think, again, back to the conversation of credibility that I know you guys don't want to hear me repeat over and over, but I'm going to at least one more time tonight, I think, is we need to think about those things. He showed us some ideas, and I think through the process that we're going to march, those are the kinds of things that we've got to at least look at again and contemplate. How can we use some of that space? And there certainly may be parts of that facility that got to go, but maybe there are parts that can be salvaged. I particularly love the idea of the old gym and trying to salvage that and throw in the expandable chairs and making it a stage, for the presentation space again, whatever you want to call it. So being able to think outside the box like that is great. And I think that he also drew our attention to some assumptions or convictions that we have or may have had that may or may not be true. And to the extent that our decision-making has in the past hung or hinged on some of those assumptions or beliefs, exploring those and doing a better job of making sure that we're minding our P's and Q's, that'll be huge too. So I think, again, it's a great resource down the line. Tonight, I don't have any questions that I can offer up.
I guess my thing is I have a lot of questions, but I'm not sure that he'll be able to answer them. Because I'm looking at structurally, even Matt talked about the sloping area and putting in the basement, and can we do that? It looks like that was almost what was done with the gym, to me, when I look at it. So I think it's an option, but can he come out and say, yes, we can definitely do it? I think you even said at the presentation that you'd have to talk to a builder, right? So, hire somebody. So I think a lot of the questions that I want answered would need to come from somebody who's actually preparing a plan to do something like what Mr. Evangelista said. Because, if it can be done, it can be done, right? But can it be done? That's my big question. And, I know that there's Jim sent me some information about, the 25% rule for renovation, but the substantial renovation, but that looks to be only if we're receiving financial state aid. It specifically
looks to be, but in
the
implementation, it has not been. It's if you're.
Because it says, if you want state aid, if you do a 25% renovation or more renovation, but we don't have that, right?
No.
So, does it apply to us?
That's a good question.
Would we
The
get it
answer
later
is
on?
yes, it still applies.
Okay.
That's the answer we were given back when we were preparing the FAQ booklet as an example. The state still has to sign off on it.
Any plan that we put forth, the Department of Education has to sign
Right.
off on. We can't just
Right.
decide, this is how we want to
Well,
do it.
I
and
know that,
We're just
but-
going to forget about all these rules, and they still have to sign off on it.
I know that,
Although
but
I get that-
the code that was sent to me specifically stated, if you want state aid,
Right.
you can't do more than a 25% renovation. So I'm wondering, is there one that says if you're just doing it without any money from the government, and it even says, I think what the reason they did that was because they were sick of Band-Aiding schools with state money. But if we're Band-Aiding our school with our money.
Band-Aids.
Yeah, so I guess, obviously, we'd have to, I know I got your email about the building, that you didn't find that there was any reason why we couldn't renovate substantially.
Great.
The interest isn't just about the money. The other interest that the state stakes a claim to in this is ensuring a certain level of adequacy of educational facility as we provide public education to kids around the state. And so protecting people from folks who might want to design something that is much less than the adequacy, regardless of money. But I mean, that's the explanation that was given to me as to why it isn't all just about the money. It's about a minimum level of adequate facilities or adequate education, however you want to interpret it. And that's the state's interest in this.
Well, I think if a renovation was done, I think we could probably all agree that we would want something adequately sized for students in town. So that would be part and parcel of the renovation, would be making sure that those minimums can be met as much as possible. You know, I mean, even with, we were talking about the fire and life safety for the ADA requirements, because that wasn't really addressed. The hallways are what a mess now, right? But, you know, thinking outside the box, you had that room in the new school that had all the lockers in one room.
Right.
So if we were to remove the lockers in the old building,
Widens the hallway.
put them all in one room, it would widen the hallway, correct?
Right.
So
Right.
we could do that. And then we were discussing about elevators and how the elevator in that room would be great, in that building would be great, but every time you have to go to the second floor, you'd have to go all the way up. So do we need a second elevator? I mean, that would have to go on the fire and life safety next year anyway, correct?
So how would we proceed with getting some questions together? I know on one of the drawings that Matt provided us with had an aerial shot of the addition on the side. And I know that there was a discussion a few years ago about putting an addition there, and then there was concerns about a fire lane and access for turnaround. So is that something that, and I'm just throwing it out there, that Mike Hoffman would be able to come and look at this with us as a board and just go through this and maybe...
Rick Malasky is the one that brought up the concern.
Okay.
That the fire trucks need to be able to get all the way around that building.
So
with that design, if you see this house,
Right,
as close as it
right.
is, there's setbacks, like there's rules
Right.
about building so
Right.
close. So that would be a concern of mine.
So do we start with Malasky and Hoffman and the board and go through this together? Or do we have
No.
an architect come in and look at this and see if it's possible?
I think we start with fire and life safety,
No,
which is what we're getting ready to do. And it was great that Matt put a presentation together, and we had the time and put it in the agenda. We did it last week, but I don't, the fact that we have that presentation in hand doesn't mean we should stop the things we're doing and see if we can't figure out the pros and cons and the pluses and minuses of what Matt gave us, which was really a vehicle to say, this can be done. You can do something like this. Hey, the numbers are, there's enough money here so that if you tell me that there's an issue or a question about this, whatever it is, you got enough money to fix that. I think it was a great tool, but if we're gonna spend time and sit with Chief Malasky and we wanna bring in an architect or we wanna bring in Mike Hoffman, let's start first by saying, what is it we're doing for fire and life safety this summer? What's left for occupancy in Malasky's list for next summer?
We already know that, though.
Yeah, we already know those things.
We know that.
You do.
You've been in the meetings. I mean, we passed
We just
the
talked about
list
that,
of
but-
fire and life safety stuff, and we already know
One
that.
of them is the elevator.
Okay. We're going ahead and we're doing, but so at this point, you're comfortable that you know everything that's gonna have to be done next summer too?
No.
I'm not comfortable with everything that's gonna happen.
Well, no,
next
because
summer.
they want to put an elevator on their building.
No,
I'm
no,
not
I'm
comfortable.
not saying, are you comfortable spending the money doing it? I'm saying, you know everything that's gonna be done next summer.
Based on the list that's been given us?
But no, we don't, because we don't know what happens this summer.
Well,
That's a
well,
big thing.
All right, we've been given a list of,
Right.
this is what needs to be done this summer. And then
then
that will
depending on what
happen.
happens this summer.
And then after that, if
the
something
intent
extra
is
gets
to
done,
accomplish
then
Yeah.
we'll have what's left over. I mean, we already know that.
Okay.
So does,
So I'm gonna take myself out of this conversation now, because I'm not comfortable that I have a real good sense.
Well,
or
that's
even
fine.
a reasonable sense of what we're trying to do with fire and life safety. Questions have been asked of me, and I'm like, Chief Molaski said, and here's the plan, and I talked about it here 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and I'm looking through it, trying to make sure that I can figure out what it is we need to do, what's been done, and what we're going to do, because I think that has a lot to do with what does that facility look like? And we talked before about how much money we're gonna spend on that. Somebody, I've heard multiple times people say, I don't wanna spend money, and it's not even been at the town, at the board table as much as it's been around town. I don't wanna spend money on an elevator that then we're gonna tear down. Well, I think there's some really serious discussions and decisions that need to be made, because where I'm sitting is, when we get done upgrading that building and putting an elevator, for instance, next summer, I'm gonna wanna make sure that we hold on to that investment, and
Right.
that makes an opportunity to pursue something like Matt put together as a presentation all the more interesting and all the more important. Because now I'm talking about reno and add in that space as opposed to new construction.
Right.
And that drives a conversation about architect, a firm that is willing to do renovation in that facility and can give us guidance on where we can and where we can't, and what's good and what's bad. And, I mean, so there are conversations, and, okay. I guess I'm just talking myself through, that's fine. You guys want to take Matt's plan at this point and
No
and
one's
run
saying
with
that
it?
that's what we want to
Nobody's
do.
No, you're talking about bringing in experts now, so we can talk about it, how we can
We're
make
talking
that.
about
discussion.
how we want to proceed
It's a
Okay.
discussion.
exploring
And-
some type
right.
of renovation. I mean,
and I think it's important that we do have a full conversation where, again, even if it's again, we lay it out. This summer, these are the things, these are the specific things that we're looking for. Next summer, to complete fire and life safety and ADA compliance, that's what's going to happen next summer.
It has to be voted on. So we can't even say it's going to happen.
We've only voted on this summer.
Phase one.
Phase one.
You've only have
So-
enough
Right.
money to do phase
Right.
one.
So
you-
we haven't even
Right.
broached, so
Correct.
that's all gonna come back up again.
Correct.
And we're gonna have to talk about
So
it.
then I think about, all right, so code compliance with sizes, of classroom sizes. When do we address that as well?
That's not part of the fire and life
No,
safety.
I understand that,
safety
but that's a concern as well.
so I guess, I mean, you just want to discuss fire and life safety for,
If this
I
group-
guess I'm
if
just
this-
trying to
I'm done.
figure out
I'm all
where
set.
you're
What I've heard is that there's comfort, you guys are clear what you're doing, fire and life safety this year and next. I'm gonna go back and read the paperwork and see if I can't catch up.
Well, and let me be clear on this. We can't be clear what's going to happen next summer.
You must be, because you're gonna do a certain amount of it this
Depends on what
summer.
happens this summer. You don't know, we don't know what's gonna happen when that wall
When
comes
they open
down.
that building, you have no idea what's gonna.
We have no idea. We can sit here and say, we
I
are so
understand.
comfortable with that.
I understand, so you're suggesting that, all right, you're talking about the unknown. I'm just wanting to go back and make sure that I'm up to date on what the known issues are,
Right.
that we
Right.
know that we're budgeting for, we know we're going to fix. Okay. Great.
I mean, something can happen, they take down one little tile, and we've opened up a whole can of worms. That changes everything. That changes everything. Am I not right, or am I missing something? Because, again, you've done this before, I haven't. So I'm basing it on past experience in this town, and knowing that you never know what's gonna happen when you take down that wall.
True, okay.
I'm trying to get where you're
No,
sitting.
that's great, no, I'm just, hey, you wanna open the doors next September 15th, or next September of 15, doesn't matter what you find behind that wall, you're gonna do it, you're gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
Or we're not, or we're gonna be sitting we're gonna be cross-legged in the field having
Right.
class, so, I mean, it's,
Well,
But I
and we
guess, I
kinda
mean,
knew
have-
that.
We have
But
to
then-
have this discussion at some point, because even if it doesn't maybe get on the ballot for next year, it is going to be part of the CIP program, so we need to discuss where we're gonna go going
Right.
forward.
Well, that was my next
Are
question.
we going to consider renovation? Should we start now? Should we start planning for those 5 years? I mean, it has to,
If
we
we
have
as
to
a
discuss
board
it now.
are happy just moving forward with fire and life safety, what do you say to all those people that have come to us and said, we want a long-term solution on the ballot next March?
Well, and that's why I brought it up about, if we want to pursue, obviously fire and life safety, that's a non-negotiable. It has to get done. We've got kids in the building, that's it. So if we want to look years in advance, we're going to need to have an architect that can at least put it to rest. Are we going to do addition or renovation?
And I'm not saying that we
have to do both at the same time.
reasonably,
Well,
with
and that's
everything
what I'm
else.
saying. So we've got to acknowledge the elephant in the room, fire and life safety. But at the same time, we've got to determine what's the architect.
We need a direction, I guess. That's what we're looking for. This kind of, where are we heading? You know, that's what I'm trying to, so we know this summer we're doing fire, life, and safety. Boom. Then what? So if we have somebody kind of give us specs or kind of look at Matt's idea and say, he's crazy, you know?
Or he's not.
Or he's not, you know, or the people that live next door say, we're done living in our house, we'll surrender the house, we'll donate it to Newmarket. You know, there's so many things that, the what ifs, but we have to start somewhere to open the discussion, and that's the only way that's the only thing I can think of. Do you have somebody look at this, and like Matt said, poke holes in it?
So I guess that leads us back to, do we have an architect, an architectural firm that is willing to do an addition and renovation with the district?
I wish you would think out loud. You were never lost for words, so I'm trying to, where are you going?
Inside your
I
brain.
mean, listen, this is, I've talked to the board before, and I think we have a significant number of fundamental things that we need to learn as a board and do as a board. And so I understand the questions that have been posed at the microphone, and I understand some of the sense of urgency that some of you feel. I think we have some fundamental things that we need to deal with as a board that far outweigh, as amazing as that sounds, the facilities concerns that we know are pressing down on us. I think as a working unit, we have issues we have to deal with. I mean, when the lights are out and we all go home, I'm going to remind some of you of the conversation we had in non-public and some of the words that were used that led us to discord tonight. And I don't mind discord. I think it's probably very healthy for us. But I think we've got to work on how are we going to work together. That's one. Two, I think we have some enormous changes coming in the fact that a superintendent is leaving. And I don't just mean because we have to search for and find a superintendent, but I'm not sure there's commonality right now if we had to describe the superintendent we want to have replace the superintendent when we can go looking. That we have to deal with. We have items on this agenda that are yet going to come up that are going to scratch again at the fundamental process I think this board needs to go through in decision-making. Small decisions before we can, I'm talking about crawl before we walk, before we run. So I wouldn't envision right now a scale of any project in the multi-millions for us to make a decision right now, because I'm not convinced that we're making good and prudent work on basic stuff. And I want to find that this board can start to become better educated and informed. I've talked about the workshops. Hey, look, you can disagree with me, and I understand the big sigh. I can't believe Nathan wants to.
I can't breathe. I
Yes,
got a
you can't breathe.
cold.
That's it.
Can I
All I
sigh?
know is we have got to, I want to see us do some of this stuff and get better educated. So when I say I don't think we know, hey, I just got educated. You guys know. That's great. I haven't been on the board as long as you have, so maybe some of those documents I need to go out and spend more time with to grow comfortable with, because I'm not comfortable just saying, somebody said we had to do a project, and now they're doing a project, and that means I know. I want to know what's in the project. People ask me on the street, I don't want to just say, I don't know, I'm sure you can find some documentation on the web, go look. I want to have a sense that, because I feel like people expect me to know what the hell I'm talking about. So I would encourage us to keep working on crawling before we walk. And the reason that I write all this stuff up is not so that it can be funny, it's so that she's got a really good resource she can work from, and it's so that so that you guys walk away with a greater sense of what it was I really meant. Because if I do it off the cuff, two things, I'm not sure what you heard, and I can't necessarily remember what I said, so that at least guides me, because I want to get us to a point where some of those things come more smoothly, and we start to build a real sense of credibility with the community, so that when we do make some of these decisions, we get more than 49% of the people who think we know enough to know what we're talking about.
I guess what I would say to that, and I appreciate your comments, but
I can't shut this
You want us
off.
to crawl before we walk. There are some of us on this board and in this community that have been crawling for the better part of 10 years.
And we're still right where we
So
are.
that's where a lot of people in this community are, and that's where I am. And I really don't have a lot of interest in going over a lot of old ground that we've already gone over.
But these 4 people haven't gone over that ground.
Okay, so I don't know how to fix that, but that's where I am.
I guess I don't want to run. I just want to take a look. I mean, I think we need to start now. So maybe it doesn't get on the ballot for March. But I don't think that starting now is any worse than starting next year. I think we should, work towards multiple solutions.
We have to do them both at the same time.
Oh, you have to do all of it.
So
But
I guess
you also have to talk, while you're talking about renovation, you have to talk about tuition and cooperatives again.
we could send out letters to that. I don't know that we get any response.
You don't have to do it for me.
No, we've
But-
talked about this.
But every meeting, I mean, again, we did talk about this, but all but the last couple of meetings, maybe even all but this meeting and one other, since the election, that microphone has had somebody step up and
You are
say,
correct.
I really think if we just, beg Oyster River a little bit more, they'll let us in.
Well, I'm not opposed to sending
But-
out letters to
So,
Epping
but
or.
I guess again, I'll go back to that every time, and we have to find a way in Newmarket to get to a point where when a group of elected folks say, we don't have an alternative in that regard, it can be credible.
Yeah,
And so
I agree.
And so right now, we can start talking about lots of things, but I think we have to start by building credibility.
And how do you do that unless you do a project?
How do you do that?
I mean, what are your suggestions?
Suggestions are, I don't think that the one-page contract that was brought to us for football that led us to say, no, we have to table this and have another meeting, is the way that staff should bring us a proposal like the football contract.
Well, you're right.
So I'll be honest
and
with
we
you.
brought that
That's the
up.
reason we tabled it, and that's the reason we
Right.
pushed it
And then we
out.
found out Epping had issues with it. There was a whole lot of misinformation that got out there, of lack of communication. So.
Okay, but listen, I don't want to toot my own horn, but the material that gave you all of the answers, I made the phone call, and I got you that data, and I brought it to you. And it's not my job to do it.
What are you talking about?
You weren't at the meeting. We looked at all of the information.
We
Maybe
asked
none of that
for
was
the-
meaningful.
you mean-
We asked for the
Maybe
old
none of that was
contract. We asked
meaningful.
for-
But for me, it was meaningful. What the old contract looked like, what have the costs been, what does the roster look like, how many kids are involved? I'm just trying to look like, hey, listen, I could have made the decision first day. It's the right thing for kids. We got 37 kids. I didn't know how many, but now I know. 37 kids between Newmarket and Epping that are playing football. I'm not going to pull the rug out from under 37 kids that are having a great time. I know what student athlete as a concept does for students as academics. It's a great thing for the majority of kids that do that. But if I take a single piece of paper and go, yep, okay, fine, I don't prove to anybody that I had the foggiest notion. Any more than I can sit here and say, hey, good luck with that stuff this summer on Fire and Life. I feel real good about it. I know what it is. I don't like the fact that we're doing construction management. We're driven to it because of the timing of it, and I grant that, but I think that's a conversation you all should have. How many of you know the difference between a standard process, a design, bid, build, and a construction management? Well, how many know the risks of it?
We had a whole presentation on it last year.
Okay.
I don't remember it though. But last year
I mean,
was
I'm
on
not saying I
last
could
year's
repeat it
Not all of us
verbatim.
did that. Not all of us were there for that. So there's a unanimity piece in board service that we got to work on. There's an orientation piece. There's roll up our sleeves and get around the table so we can all gain some
We
information.
can do that, but we'll never do that if we never start to discuss what it is we might want to do going forward.
Absolutely.
Because why have that
I'm not
meeting if we're not interested in doing a renovation?
But in order to
Or in
build the
discussing it.
credibility, if someone is telling us on the board or communicating via the microphone or online, however, that they're not really sure what is going on, then what do we need to do as a board to say, this is the first phase of fire and life safety. These are the specific things that we have determined or been told are determined elements that need to be fixed. They're this and this and this and this. And even if it's redundant for some people, and I get that, it may be just a new piece that someone may have overlooked in the greater scope of the conversation that we've been having. And I think that as a board, to build the credibility, to be transparent, to do our due diligence, we need to have someone who can come to the microphone and give us the presentation so that we know this phase requires this. So-and-so said this. It is state law says this. Here you go. This is what needs to happen. And that redundant word, I understand that. But I firmly believe that as a board, and it's not starting from square one, it's not kicking the can, it's going back and it's showing the credibility that we're willing to do to show people, we're going to look at this and we're going to do it on camera and we're going to show you. And that's what we're expecting for this phase. And then at the same time, have a conversation about next year's goal. What are we going to do? Are we going to do the elevator, or are we going to look at addition renovations? So those pieces of the pie need to come together, not running, but baby steps. So I really think it would be beneficial for not only the board members, but for the community, who's probably really just tired of talking about this situation, to do that. And to do it for us, and to do it for them, and to do it for the students.
And just to have a direction, just baby direction.
But that would help us to see, this is the direction right now. After we head in that direction and get the ball started, then we're going to hop over here, and this will be the direction we're going. And I think it's fair to do that for everybody. So who needs to come in to tell us specifically? These are the goals for fire and life safety for this summer.
You don't have to go back and do that for me. I've got the worksheets.
I've already handed you out
I've got the
a
worksheets.
schematic drawing and
Yep.
and it lists on there every single issue, and then it describes it in detail. Giving you the budget that corresponds to that and shows how it's in phase one and
And we
phase
voted
two.
on it. And it-
Tonight, when I gave my report,
Yes, we
and
did.
I purposely,
Good
because
list,
you're right, you have to
absolutely.
tell them every time. I said, here's what we're doing. The biggest piece are those ceilings. We've got stairwells that are non-compliant. We've got ramps that are non-compliant. And because of those ramps, we've got to reshape doorways or move doorways. And
That's it.
so, and it's all in the old part of the building. I don't know how much more, unless you want me to give you a schematic, but that really is phase one.
I apologize, folks. Like I said, I'm going to go back and read the stuff so that I can be better prepared. He's given it to us. I've got it. You've got it. We're all set. You don't have to talk about Fine Life for me. That's fine. But
Well, it's
but
not
at this
that we
point-
don't need to talk
but
about
at
it.
this
I'm
point-
just wondering, I mean, is that, I think that we need to explore our options as a board.
Absolutely. And start with
That's all I'm saying.
renovation.
If you want, if you feel that we should send out feelers, I'm not opposed to that for tuitioning. You send out feeler letters, but we can also, at the same time, explore whether renovation is a possibility.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like a lot of people who may consider tuitioning may also be in favor of a renovation if we can keep it at a price that would be, more fiscally responsible.
And I
for
think
their
people who are willing to, would vote for a new school would also be willing to compromise on a renovation that provides a safe environment and it meets DOE standards. And that's the coming together, which we're all looking for in this community.
Yes, so I just think that if we could, and like I said, I'm not opposed to, exploring multiple options. I think that that's what we need to do as a board, so that we can come up with the best one for the town, so.
Any further discussion before we move on?
I'm looking at two people, and I'm trying to, where are your heads at?
Who?
Both of you. The two men on the ends. Is this, you have experience, and you have experience. Kelly has experience because she's had to deal with this. So what we're saying, is it making sense? Is it clear what we're trying to say?
We can keep pushing, and I'll just keep trying to say it with maybe a little more harsh language each time. Let me try it this way. We can decide to go in any direction we want right now. This 5-member board can decide anything it likes right now, and it can put anything it wants on the March ballot right now. It won't pass. I don't think we have the credibility with the community that the decisions we make and the recommendations we put out there are believable and credible. I just think, as sad as it is, there's some things we have to do to show that we're credible, and that when we say we've done this research about renovation or whatever, you can buy it, you can believe it.
But
Good luck.
I don't know that time-wise, we would be able to get something on the March ballot.
Right.
I can't commit to that because
Me
we do
neither.
have a lot on our
Right.
plate. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't still be exploring the options for a future ballot, so that we're not, at the
Exactly.
last minute. That's, so I don't.
And so you've reached a point where if the conversation doesn't get started pretty quick, we've waited too long. For me,
No,
I'm just looking at the totality of all the other stuff that we've got to deal with, and I personally, I just don't think I'm at a point now where like, yeah, let's take that one on. We just saw where that one got us. I just want to see us have some other successes, and when we've had some other successes, and I feel like we've come to a point where we've grown some greater credibility, then we take a swing at something and we get moving.
Let me throw this out there.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying. Go slow, take our time. I've got a community that I've never seen more fired up. I had people voting that I hadn't seen out of their houses in years. So there's a fire in this community and people are coming to our meetings, never come before. We have boards that are paying attention that really kind of poo-pooed us away. While I have that ball rolling, I want to keep that ball rolling. So if that means paying money, and I've seen it on some of the websites, they're willing to pay the money to have somebody come in and look at these plans, put the specs together. Is it doable? We need to know, is this even doable? If it's not doable, it gives us something else to look at. Another option, again, is it that ad reno that we thought wasn't an option? Maybe it is an option, but we had to put it to rest. And go ahead.
So let me just, if I could just summarize. As a board, it seems that we're comfortable looking at fire and life safety for this year and getting that done. Pursuing options for possible tuitioning agreements, just starting conversations.
Just writing letters.
Exploring.
I'm not comfortable with that, but.
Just writing letters. It's like, as a board.
What you need to do, if you're gonna send out tuition agreements, first you need to find out letters. You need to find out what the town will accept as a viable response from those communities that say they're not interested. Because we've done this already.
I know,
And
I
we've
know.
gotten letters that say they're not interested, and people still don't believe it.
I know.
So, before we do that, you need to figure that out.
Okay.
Test some people, ask those web pages, find out what the barometer of credibility and trust is gonna be before we waste our time doing that.
Okay.
But those are things that we need to discuss. If we agree as a board that that's one of the things we should look at, then your area of expertise and.
I don't want to do it.
No, I mean,
I
you-
am not interested. I will go out on record right now. I am not interested in soliciting community support for a tuition agreement at all. This is our problem. We need to fix it in our community, and I'm not interested in it. But that's me. I'm
but
one
there are-
person. There are four of you.
There are
so-
members from our community that are asking us to look at that one last time.
Yep.
And I
And they
think-
did that last year, and they did that the year
Right.
before.
But we also have people on the flip side that are asking us to build a new building. And we've tried that how many times as well. So we've got to accommodate what people are asking that we can reasonably look at.
People are going to continue
are.
to always
Yes.
say that my plan is better. Vet my plan. We've already spent $500,000 on architectural drawings and, how much is enough for this town? Really? Everybody comes up, oh, I want this renovation, and someone else says, go to the tech school in Stratham, and, every year, someone throws something new, and then we spend a whole year sitting and spinning, trying to come up with answering all their questions, and it's never good enough.
I
So-
think each time we've done that, and I can only speak from my experience since 2003 when I moved in, each time we've done that spawned or spurred on by the enthusiasm and the emotion of a group of the community that represented some percentage, you'll have to tell me because you were paid more attention than I, 25, 30, 35, 40, but it certainly wasn't 80% of the community. It wasn't 75% of the community that spurred on those endeavors you just talked about. And I think before I want to launch another full-scale, everybody in the town with signs on everybody's front steps, having a conversation that way about any solution, I want to find a way to be incredible enough so that the conversation we're having is one that is being heard and accepted by enough of the community that we can get it done. And I understand that there are people in the community who are not interested in hearing what that half thinks, or that half, or that half, or that half. But the reality is, I think that as long as you whip up your enthusiasm and your emotion from a small percentage of the public, you're going to continue to get an insufficient percentage of the public that hears and accepts and will support your solution. At our retreat, we talked about doing some brainstorming. In this case, we talked about reaching out to reps from the council because our community took it to the doorstep of the council and demanded that they get involved and try to help this happen. And the council came here and stood and said, hey, look, we can help you. So I know that we've invited and started some of that brainstorming about ways that we can achieve the greatest credibility with the greatest breadth of the community. I don't know what that looks like or how that comes about. We got to have a conversation. We got to come to some fruition or some result from that, right? I shared enthusiasm up and down about the efforts that are happening in this town to find healing after all the emotional stress that went on through that last voting cycle. But I sure hope that our ultimate approach will be a very deliberate one and will avoid emotion in this case, and it will seek the greatest possible breadth. And I know that that's been everybody's goal probably every time they've tried, but it's clear they didn't get the mix right. I hope that we'll be guided this case by agreements in fact that can be and will be or are accepted widely in town, because that's the only way. And I don't know right now if that's a tuition agreement, a cooperative, a renovation, an addition, or us sitting out there cross-legged in the field. But until such time as, and maybe you guys feel it already, but I don't yet, although I feel like the tide is changing a little bit, but it sucks because some of what that tide changing means is a superintendent with 1 year of his 3 years to go has said, for lots of good reasons, I'm done. Well, that's not what I wanted to have happen, but I certainly respect it for 1,000,001 reasons. I'm looking across at a guy that I look across at in meetings all the time throughout the last few years, right? I get it. Me having to say some of the things that I'm saying and me challenging this board with a guy I've worked with, that's not comfortable for me and it's not where I wanted us to go. But I think, as much as it may be an uncomfortable situation for members of staff or for members of the board, I think there's a long way to go because we just did what we could and it didn't get there. That's all I'm saying. I'm not suggesting that we should just stop and put our heads in the sand, and I'm not saying we should crawl without eating. I get that we got to do a lot of things, but on May 1?
I'm not saying we should hire a builder like tomorrow.
No, I know you're not. Oh, I know you're not.
And write up a plan. I'm just saying we need to have the conversations about where we intend on going in the future.
And I hope that we can have a conversation as well, or at the same time, how do we think we're going to get there successfully? Because
And we can do that too.
Right, because I think that we've had ideas. We got ideas right now. We can go pull out blueprints, go back 10 years about things we could do. But none of those are things that had a credible audience with the community, so.
This last vote, if you think about it, that was 2 months. That 49%, let's call it 49%, by the time we finished that tuition agreement, it didn't go through. It was 2 months we did that. That was a fire in the belly of all, I mean, we get 49%, they get their 50%, but all that was done in 2 months. Imagine if collectively, we could, I think with that community still fired up, and with this board, who is intent on finding a solution, a long-term solution, I think we could find something.
I love the fire in the belly, but I gotta tell you, 45 million was never something I was happy about. And you weren't either.
I wasn't happy
And so
with the design at all.
I get it. So, I mean, I guess, again, we're back to, I know that there's momentum and there's enthusiasm and there's all of that, but a lot of that was grudging. I'm really hopeful that whatever solution comes next. Remember I said, I don't know if you were all there that night, we're counting ballots, we're sorting ballots out. I was sitting at the town table, working the town ballots, right, because I was on the other ballot. When they rolled the numbers out, I said, you know what? 1,600 people said no. I don't know any of those people probably, but I'm going to say 800 of those 1,600 would have said yes in a blink if they thought it was affordable and reasonable for town. So I'm just looking at it and saying, I got to figure out how those 800 feel and what they feel is affordable. So it's not even about what the solution is. It's about what can they be open to? Because
Well, the only way I'm sorry.
That's okay.
go ahead,
we
please.
have
I'm
to
done.
define-
I've talked enough. You know where I'm at.
the only way we'll know that is we actually have the discussion, because that's what's gonna bring those people out and tell
Right.
us, they're gonna be the ones that come out and tell us what they're comfortable with, right? So if we're gonna we need to open up the discussion in order to get feedback.
And we have to define what a long-term solution is that fits the needs of the district and the financial strains that we're all feeling as well. So can that segue into our next discussion piece with the formation of a facilities committee?
Yes. Probably.
All right, so before we go there, and we're talking about fire, life, and safety, and we're talking about the interim, who's going to be in charge of the fire, life, and safety project this summer? Who's
yes, we are.
going to be watching over that? Because you're not going to be here.
You have two people.
Okay.
The business administrator is typically very involved in facilities, at least from a SAU arena, and then the high school principal.
Okay.
As example, last summer, he had meetings almost daily with the construction crew there, and it was a great relationship. So he's your eyes on the ground.
That's what
Yeah.
that kind of came up, I thought
Yeah.
of that this week.
No.
All right, that's good to know. All right, so let's go into facilities committee. And I have my notes.
As another note, we also, Matt's presentation, thank you, it's getting late, also revolved around the elementary school. So we're not just talking about the high school as well. So, I mean, the conversation has to start somewhere. And it doesn't mean we have to go out and spend $500,000 tomorrow. It means we need to start to have the conversation.
We do have to rent or buy a modular, because we have to have that by September. So do we buy or do we rent? And that could be part of that conversation as well. Good point. So you can't have a facilities committee without direction. We don't have a direction.
We need to be able to charge a facilities committee with something to do.
And we don't have that. Right. So, but I wanted to bring it up. I just think it's important that.
People have asked us to do it.
Yeah.
but
Well, then they need to understand, well, why don't we? Well, because we don't know what we're doing.
People have asked us to go look at a tuition agreement again, too, some more.
I didn't say I wasn't for it. I'm
No,
just saying people asked us
And it was me saying, let's bring that facilities committee up again so
And
I
now
can
it's on the
answer that
agenda.
question. Oh, so you're saying tuition will be back on the agenda?
No, I'm not saying, I'm saying,
Well, isn't our agenda run by our community?
I think it needs to be,
Like, doesn't our community kind of send messages to the school board committee, send it to Jim and say, why isn't this on there? Put this on there. Phone calls. And they're saying, why isn't the facilities committee on there? And now they have their answer. There's no direction. We don't have a direction yet. And that's the discussion that just happened.
Well, I mean, I guess could a facilities committee also work on tuitioning agreements? Technically, they're finding us a facility.
Well, if the board says that's a great direction to head in, or wow, a part of your conversation you brought that up, and that committee, whatever it is, whoever it is, brings it to the board and say, we were discussing this.
I mean, it could be their call to request, that feeler letters be sent out to surrounding towns.
But I think for the sake of this evening's discussion, the time, we're still not halfway done with our agenda. Would it be appropriate if we table this until we meet again and then maybe have some thoughts about what we're comfortable heading in, how we're feeling? It would give time for people to research what's the next phase for fire and life safety. Would that be appropriate for everybody?
Fine with me.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
Do I need to, we don't need to vote on that?
I think you're fine with that.
Okay.
I want to, if you're going to give thought between now and then about tuition agreement, there are really two key factors, too, that you have to make a decision on. One is, how far are you willing to have students travel to get to a high school? I mean, there were opportunities, before where it was a little bit over an hour trip. And
There are
so
people in
and the
this
school board
community.
then said, no, we don't want that. And then the other concept is sending students to multiple schools. Because right now, I would tell you, in the immediate vicinity, there's other than Epping again, but there's really no school that would take all 300, let's say, of our students. So the willingness on your part to do a school choice model, if you will, is another question you need to think
And there
about.
are people in
Obviously,
our community that would want us to do that.
I think there are some, but
that's
you
when-
need to decide, you need to
Right.
think about that. Obviously, that's not tonight's discussion, but I just want to put those two thoughts in your head, that those are things that in the past, the board, I don't say they wrestled with, I think they had a very quick reaction to both of those questions. And so I went forward with that in mind.
I guess I gotta just try one more time and say this. When we talked at the retreat, what are the things that we talked about? And again, I was one of the people saying this, right? I'll admit that, so we said that that an overture had been made and we would seek that out. So I'm hoping to hear ideas and thoughts come back from the conversation between the board and the council. Because good, bad, or otherwise, let me lay labels on people. Everybody at the board table, at the school board table, was known to say, yes, let's put it on the ballot, and reasonably, yes, let's pass that project. I think there is a community perception, and please forgive me, 7 members of the council, that a number of council members, not all of them, certainly not all of them, but a number of council members who have been challenged to support this endeavor moving forward and get involved, were maybe not in favor. I don't know that any of them have publicly talked about what they voted, and I don't care to hear them vote on it, but I'd love to see where that conversation is going, and maybe we should look for the fruit from that conversation, because this board, again, I'm going to say it, can send out letters to everybody you want and come back and say there is no opportunity for tuitioning. And a significant portion of the community, sufficient to defeat whatever motion you might like to offer up, won't believe you.
Exactly.
Well, then maybe that's why the facilities committee, which will be
Which you've
made
had
up
before.
of a group. I know.
So I guess
I know we had one before, and people asked, oh, I didn't know there was one, even though there were minutes and recordings,
There
and it
will
was on
always be people
TV.
that do that.
I realized
Every
that.
other month, right?
So all I'm
Please.
saying
You
is,
want to join?
there's an opportunity.
So what do you suggest we do? Because
Somewhere in this community, there's somebody who can stand right there beside me and tell you that the sky is blue, and almost everybody in town will believe it's blue, no matter what's happening outside. That's what I think. And it doesn't have to be me, it can be you, it can be you, it can be you, it can be you. There's somebody like you, but not exactly like you, who can stand right beside you, and together you can be more credible. And if there are 4 of us that stand there,
So those are the people that need to be put on the facility.
I understand that, and that's what I think the overture was when members of our community took it to the council, so much so that the council actually reached across the board, across the table, right? Came to a meeting and said, okay, looks like we got to work together on this one, right? That's what I'd like to see, because I think this board just saying, we're going to go pick a bunch of people that we think should be on the facilities committee.
We didn't pick people.
No, they volunteer. And we've been through this process before, and those that feel like they're not welcome at that table don't end up at it. And I don't know how that is or why that is, and I've been there before in a paid capacity, and I'm not suggesting anybody's done anything wrong. It's really hard because, again, it's too much emotion. I'm not saying that what you did in the past was wrong. I'm saying it failed.
And it'll fail again.
Then,
I don't think it will.
well, I'm willing to say that I think, given the right effort, the right patience,
Yeah, I think,
it doesn't have to fail.
I don't think-
I think we're as close as we've ever been, not because we got 50%, but because more people have their eyes on the prize, involved in what the conversation might be now than there ever have been.
And there's more people in this community that will put their money behind any kind of misinformation that they can possibly
Well,
put their
then
money
it's
behind.
our job to do what we
To
need to
derail
do.
anything that we try. And it's propaganda.
I'm
It's
gonna-
part of a
I'm gonna-
political
I'm
system.
going to attempt not to take that stance and think that. I'm going to hope that when I speak to somebody truthfully, that they'll believe me. I mean, I'm new to the board, maybe I'm, green, and, people aren't going to believe what I say, but nobody in this town has any reason to believe that I would lie to them.
And
So, well, I'm just saying, so.
I've been doing it for six years.
People should, that's all I can hope, is that, what I'm saying is, I'm not going to take that stance. I'm going to hope that people will trust me as a board member. They voted me in, they put me here, so I'm hoping.
We have to assume that people will hopefully understand that we have the best intentions.
Yes.
Even if those intentions lead us through careful research, planning, discussions, and votes, even if those intentions lead us to a decision that they're not going to like, hopefully they will at least understand the direction we're heading in.
I guess I'm hoping more to reach out to those people.
Correct.
Then,
And that's through the
so.
that's through the process that we're on camera. We're having this conversation on camera, and it's healthy, and it's an open conversation, and I think it's an important one.
But I do agree that whoever is on the facilities committee we have to have a very rounded, facilities committee.
I mean, I think we're going to get it. I really do. I think you're going to get people stepping up that you didn't expect to step up and work together. And it's actually kind of exciting, if you think about it. We could have people that yelled at each other on Facebook and having to work together and hearing the options and understanding the options and being able to go back to their separate camps and.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Job description for the head custodian.
Yes, I presented a job description for your approval tonight. We have 2 head custodians, obviously one in each building. And not only is it the job description, but then, as we always do, we translate that into a summative evaluation form. And for the folks to understand, it has all of the performance responsibilities, and then rates each one of them, in this instance, on one of 4 levels, either needs improvement, basic, proficient, or distinguished. That really mirrors what we're doing with teachers. And it's pretty extensive. What we did is we started with the current job description, which was really pretty meager, and then looked at good samples from other districts and built this out, and then had the 2 head custodians meet with the junior senior high principal to iron out any remaining elements. And so this is with their vote of approval as well. So hopefully you will support this.
It was very thorough.
Yes.
It always is.
Can I ask a question about major duties?
We can say to the tune of what? 65
Right.
different indicators, yes.
So major duties number 5
Yes,
develops and implements a preventative maintenance program for all equipment.
yes,
Does this program already exist?
yes.
And inside of it, does it include specific language in terms of inspections, paperwork?
They have a schedule, an annual schedule of all of the equipment and the inspections and routine maintenance that they would have to do.
Do they do that like in Excel, or have we paid back in like School Dude's one of the products that's out there?
Yeah, we
don't
know, we've
have
looked
School Dude,
at
right?
School Dude in the
So
past,
this
but
is
we do not
basically
use it.
Word
It's
documents,
their
all
own-
Excel spreadsheets or whatever.
Yes, right.
And that's fine. It's an expensive tool, and you have to do a lot of work to get it to
No,
be
I
a
mean,
functional
If Bob were here, you could go through the list in his head of, okay, here's, we inspect
Filters
this
there, I gotta do
every
this.
6 months. We do
Yeah.
this 4 times a year. We do,
Okay.
so there is that routine approach to that.
Well, I move to accept the job description of the head custodian.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that's great.
Okay, correspondence.
Second. Several items here. First of all, the state recently sent me a copy of Ed 306, which is the minimum standards for public school approval, not to be confused with these standards for school construction. This is something very different. But all public schools in New Hampshire, if they're going to satisfy the compulsory education legal requirement, have to go through a school approval process. And what has happened over the past year plus, is a real close scrutiny with the Department of Education and the legislature to take a look at those standards and update them. And so these are 2014 standards. So one of the kinds of things that they have in there are things relative to class size, things relative to program. I remember what seemed like the longest debate of all was around family and consumer science, and shall they require that for high schools? Shall they require that for middle schools? And it turned out, it went back and forth, and the answer was yes in both situations. So we're fortunate where we're already positioned for that, and some districts aren't. But the way that it has worked in the past, I haven't seen that they've changed the time frame, is that I think it's every 2 years your school comes up. And what principals have to do is the DOE provides online a matrix, if you will, of all of these standards, and the principal has to indicate we are in compliance, and where we're not, they have to indicate that. And then I have to sign off on that, and then that gets submitted, and if there are any non-compliance issues, then the state comes back to us and say, okay, how do you plan to address this in the future? A great example was, I think a couple years ago, there was, in family and consumer science, not only does it say you have to have the program, but you have to have courses that address certain needs. And we had one that wasn't being addressed, and I think that's what's led to senior seminar. But I could be wrong, but I think that's what has led to that. So it's a very good process. I'm not sure how long it will last, because it is new, but there has been some talk about ditching this system for high schools and using NASC accreditation as dual purpose, accreditation and school approval. So right now we have two. We have NASC accreditation, and we have the Department of Ed school approval process. It could change for high schools.
May I ask, where are we with that accreditation? I know that Mr. Andruski sent the letter.
We have not heard back, and I don't know. Their meeting schedule, my recollection is usually they meet in May sometime.
Oh, okay.
They don't meet frequently, but they typically meet sometime in March, and then a few months later.
So we should hear.
I'm expecting we will
by the
hear
end of
before the end of the year.
Okay, great. Okay.
Okay, and so there is that for your information. Letter, I met with a woman named Doreen Howard, who had been a longtime Newmarket resident, moved to, I believe it was Colorado, and experienced some educational differences out there, and then came back here to Newmarket, and what she experienced out there were year-round schools. And so she's a real advocate for year-round schools, and would like to express to you folks that as you consider options, maybe this is one that you would consider. So what I promised her I would do, and I've provided for you in the correspondence, is the letter that she wrote, as well as a lengthy research article that she provided me. And it says, Making Time, What Research Says About Reorganizing School Schedules. And so it covers a myriad of topics. Among that is year-round schools. The last thing that I have for correspondence, U.S. News and World Report, people know well that they come out with their 50 best colleges, but they also do 50 best high schools. And then what they do is rate, to get to those high schools, what they do in each state is they rate all of the high schools against some criteria. And if I can find it in all this paperwork on it. Let's see. I think. I got it. It's all right. I knew I had it, so I found it. So I give the criteria. So in New Hampshire, there it is. In New Hampshire, they rated 79 public high schools and 5 charter schools, so out of 84 schools, and then they give a rank order. The criteria were student to teacher ratios, so in other words, class size, college readiness as measured by success on AP exams, math proficiency, and for us it's our statewide testing, and so it's the level of proficiency in math, and then likewise the level of proficiency in reading. So I've got a list that I didn't print them all out for you. I printed as far down as Newmarket, and of the 84 schools, Newmarket ranked 20th amongst all those schools. So We do extremely well. If you look at our data, I think one of the things that's terrific for us are our terrific success for proficiency rates in math and reading. Where it's down is in AP, but different schools have different philosophies relative to AP. Some are very selective as to who gets in there, and that then can certainly, in the end, help boost your success rates. But we don't have that approach. It's anybody who wants to take that risk, we want you there. And so that means you may have a lower success rate. But
Also, just, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but generally our AP test scores are 4s and 5s.
generally, they're pretty good, right? So I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm
I
just
know.
trying to show that piece of data. But in any case, to be ranked 20th is a real good news story. So I like that report, even if it just have just those particular measures. So. And that's all there is for correspondence.
All right, nothing from the business department, no policy, no resignations. We're on to nominations.
Okay, hang on. I lost my way. Okay. As you know, Christopher O'Callahan is retiring at the end of this year, and so we went through a process to find a suitable replacement for him. And I am nominating this evening Christina Cochran in your packet, again, for Special Education Coordinator. And in your packet is information that, a nomination sheet that provides her background and experiences and the process, who's interviewed her. And then on the reverse side, as we always try to do, is provide a little bit of a feedback that kind of gives a synopsis of the predominant feeling as to why she is the best candidate. So I'd like to ask for your approval of that nomination this evening.
Jim, how many people applied for that position?
I don't know. Do you know, Pat? I wasn't either. I don't have that. I mean, it came down to 2 finalists. And at the end of that initial process that came up with the 2 finalists, I asked that we extend that. I wanted to interview the candidates, and I wanted the candidates to come back. I think we've been, to me anyway, I feel like I've been stung too many times by just basing things on a single interview, and so we did that and got some terrific. We asked then staff who met these candidates, because they did site visits to the schools and saw our programs, and said, give us feedback on your impressions now of these candidates, and the feedback for Christina was overwhelmingly positive. I really believe she's a right person for our school system.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the nomination of Christina Cochran as Special Education Coordinator for the district.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
So I appreciate Jim giving us the job description tonight, because as I looked through the packet, I sent him an email, and I sent it to him late, so it wasn't
Caught it in time.
wasn't like he could respond, and this will come up again in a minute. It wasn't like he could really face this, because I just didn't get to the packet until last night late, and then today I was trying to put my thoughts together. But I want to say this to the board, and then you can take it as you like, but I encourage Jim that, first I thought that the job description would help, but in a broader sense, I said, I remind you that we've got a very new board, and accepting Kelly, who's been here, I imagine that most of the board knows very little individually about the organizational structure of our special ed department. At some point along the lines, we eliminated a building coordinator, because I think at one point we had one in the elementary and one in the junior senior high. And now we have just one building coordinator who's working with the district director, Gene Parsons. I think it would be helpful, before asking the board to consider filling a vacancy. Now, I mean, the process is already, this is kind of like, Nathan, why did you vote on the building? Well, because the process was already in motion, right? So this process is in motion, I get that, but before we consider filling the vacancy, I think it'd be great if the board get educated about what the distinct roles are that Gene Parsons plays and that the coordinator is expected to play, how they connect with the special ed teachers, the case managers in the building, and the specialists, and how we're doing with just one instead of 2, because I know that that's been a change. To 1 instead of 2 coordinators. And then beyond that, if the board knew where the LEA responsibility lies, meaning when IEP teams meet, who is empowered to make decisions about committing the district from a funding perspective. We're going to place, we're going to assign, we're going to have these services, so on and so forth. Because ultimately, there's somebody that represents the district's interest on that team that way. And sometimes that's probably the coordinator or it's the district director, I don't know, but it depends. How are out-of-district placements managed? Who chases the birth to preschool? Remember that, I say remember, you should know that we're responsible for providing special needs services to identified students on their 3rd birthday, which means we need to know about them before they turn 3, because the services need to be, used to be you had to start working with them at their 3rd birthday. Now, services need to be rendered starting on their 3rd birthday. So we work with groups like Richard McFarland for early intervention to try to figure out who these kids are and identify them ahead. There are referrals, there's evaluations, et cetera. I wonder who's doing that and how that plays into the coordinator and the coordinator we don't have and the director. How do we handle students who age out? So if you don't graduate, technically, with a high school diploma, but your age-specific group graduates. In many cases, we have different programming for students from age 18 to 21 because we're still responsible for them until they're 21. But part of what we do in those years is figure out how to transition them into community supports and community placements and community services, right? Somebody's doing that. We're a couple of months away from starting another budget. We've got to build a budget this fall. And that's one of the opportunities for us to seriously consider, is one coordinator enough? Do we need 2? What's the role of the director with regard to the building coordinator and all of these things? That budget process goes just like this, and this is one of those times when we could get educated about what is that department, how does it work, why do we have the contract we have? And if we were doing that in the process of deciding, you know what I mean, part of it is, here's the job description, at least you know what that person's supposed to do. Don't get me wrong. This, again, I go back. I'm not expecting you to micromanage and say, wow, I looked at this job description, I don't think this person can do that piece. It's not like that, but it's, if you look at everything from 30,000 feet, then you may or may not have been able to really see and make a judgment or ask a question that might have helped you or helped the community or helped the administration move us towards being a better district. So as we contemplate now a replacement, I just wanted to share that because I think those are the steps I encourage us to take. And I know that it's tedious and it's a lot of work. And I tried to encourage in the comments that I offer the superintendent, and I'll send you home with more readings so you can see what, I tried to encourage him. It's not about I want to get in his way and stop things from happening the way that he's encouraging them to happen. These are opportunities with a relatively new board to invest time and energy so that we have more and more information, become better educated, so that when somebody says, how are you doing with the development of that budget, some of that stuff makes more sense. And you don't look at 50 pages of a budget and go, don't even know where to start. So,
I did take the opportunity and go and talk to Gene Parsons and got this description. And I looked at, and again, and you don't want to micromanage, but because there was some issue, I looked into it. And I'm comfortable with standing behind this young girl to do this position. And I can say that because I did do due diligence, because I do want this community to see us as doing that. How do we go about, we can't have a little meeting together and discuss this. I couldn't call up Nate and say, hey, guess what, I just went and saw Jean today, and this is what I learned.
This is where you do it.
Well,
And we do it here.
you know, to be, when I did read your email and I obviously I grasped what you were saying, and I think you make some terrific points. I don't think they're germane to this hire, because in our budget we have this one and only position. There's nothing other we can do. This is our best structure. What we get handcuffed with is when we try something new and then develop our budget in October, we don't have enough evidence to say, we've got to change this. And so I think the discussions you're talking about are very valid for next fall. I think the jury is out on whether this is the right model, and maybe going back to 2 building coordinators would be the right one. I think I have a lot of confidence in Christine. I mean, for what she's demonstrated at the junior senior high school, that we're going to really improve our ability to administer special education. So I'm really excited about that. So I don't see what you're saying as being related to this. the other thing that I would say is that, and again, you're talking about understanding who we are as a board and all of that. The board really only hires one person in the district.
Yep.
And you only evaluate one person in the district, and that's your superintendent. And you then have to have that confidence in your superintendent to hire the best people for the job and bring them forward for a nomination. And that is the superintendent's role to come forward with that, and then it's your role to formalize that with an election, I think it's called, of the candidate, and not arbitrarily withhold that. I really wouldn't. I don't see any reason to delay this, but I do see a reason to discuss the points that you're talking about.
I didn't mean to tie the two necessarily and
Yeah.
say that it should get in the way of this. I don't think statute would create a mechanism where the superintendent has to nominate to the board, and the board in its fiduciary responsibility has to accept or reject the nomination, is something that should be treated moving, ever, as an absolute formality. I think that the intent is that there be checks and balances, and part of building credibility is that people feel like we knew anything that allowed us to make that decision. So I just think it lends itself not when the nomination comes. It lends itself when the resignation comes to say, hey, great signal, this person's leaving, we're going to have to put a search together. Now would be a good time to say, you guys should know what this job is. You should know what the qualifications are that we're hoping to find. You should know that we found 10 or 15, 20 candidates. We whittled it down, we had a process. I don't mean to suggest for any second that any one of us is going to dictate or know better than the committee and the nomination coming forward. But it's the opportunity for us to become educated in what did we hire for and why, and who did we get that we thought was going to match that. It's just educational, and it makes that formality in law practical. It makes it pragmatic. It makes it a real. Otherwise, it's like the comments, you weren't here, but the comments with the nomination of teachers. The nomination of teachers needs to precede April 15th, otherwise it's really irrelevant. And in this case, it was irrelevant. We did it only because there's a book in Concord that the legislature passed that says we have to vote. But had we voted on April 1st, then it would have carried the weight of we were involved in the process, because had we withheld for some reason the nomination or acceptance of nomination of one or more, it would have been meaningful at that point. I'm just encouraging that the relationship that the board has with the superintendent needs to cultivate that we get educated, we do some due diligence, and we're a part of that process.
For the greater part, the personnel work is my responsibility.
Absolutely.
It really is. And the example you just gave, one would have to ask, on what basis would you be able to make a judgment that a nomination is not a viable nomination? My administrators can tell you, because I harp on it every year, we aren't moving anybody forward to tenure unless we absolutely want to live with them and their stars for the rest of their career. And so we do scrutinize very well, and we only bring forward people that we're highly confident in. But I don't know on what basis. I get your point about the 15th, and yes, it's after the fact, but the reality is, if any of you, if anybody out there had an issue, a concern over a teacher, and we handled that last time with the public complaints thing, it's clear in that language that a concern over personnel or any other thing is immediately directed to the superintendent, and the superintendent is the one who then has to take that under advisement, act on it, investigate it, and use that information going forward. So it's a difficult spot, because I understand where you want to be, and it's hard to explain to the public, but the reality is, and I know I've heard Steve Fournier say it on his side of the street too, he's responsible for personnel, and it's the same here.
So there's three things I would like to add. The first one is looking at qualifications. This is a special education coordinator who is going to be working with both buildings, so needs to have an overwhelming amount of experience with working with K through 12. And I mean overwhelming amount. We know the special education needs in this district. It's an overwhelming amount. And to have someone come in to take this position is going to need to have an overwhelming amount of experience and knowledge. If we're hiring somebody, then I think it would be beneficial as a district, before we invest in them and vet them, that we offer a 1-year contract, because that allows for changes in program that's necessary. If the program changes and we change direction, then we should be afforded that opportunity for a 1-year contract. The third thing that I would like to add is that if you are bringing this nomination to us, then that is under the assumption that the decision hasn't already been made and announced to the staff in the district. To find out that there was an email in the district sent to teachers and staff that they are hiring this person already, prior to the board being privy to any information or even approving this nomination, I think is highly unethical. It's upsetting to find out that you've demeaned the checks and balances of the board and the relationship that we have tried to develop.
Would you like me to respond?
I'd love you to.
Well, that email is unfortunate. It was done with the enthusiasm of support for the candidate. And I certainly addressed that personally in terms of, again, supervisor and saying, no, really it has to come before the board, and it really is not your decision. Certainly I gave the go-ahead to make the offer, but ultimately the process is that I come here, as I've done tonight, and make a nomination, and have done that. I would say to you that the skill set here has less to do with K-12 experience and more to do with leadership and administrative experience and an understanding of three things that really strike me: is an understanding of special education law, an understanding of mentoring new teachers, and an understanding of developing program. And I think on all counts we do extremely well here. I'm less concerned about having any experience at one level. You're looking at a fellow that spent his whole life in high schools, and yet now here I am. And I learned, as an assistant superintendent, I learned middle school, and then I learned elementary. And so I think that is an aspect that I'm not concerned about. I take very seriously my responsibility. I want nothing but the best of employees for this district, and that's why you have that recommendation tonight.
I guess related but unrelated. I just want to go back to, the superintendent offered up, I don't think that on April 1st, had we considered the nomination of teachers, there would have been any cause, no reason for the board to have. And I accept that it'll be a fundamental disagreement, that's fine. I think that honoring the role of the board and adding credibility to the board or relevance to the board, as opposed to taking the stance that you are irrelevant in the process, so please accept irrelevance, isn't consistent with where I want to go as a board, which is help cultivate a sense that we have a role to play, as opposed to let's make sure it's clear you don't have a role to play. I have been in that seat and said, who are you sitting here right now to question the nomination in this case, because the superintendent carries that nomination forward? I've given that speech, and I agree with it. So it's not that I think that on April 1st, the superintendent's nomination should have been overturned by a board that isn't really in a position to make that judgment. It's simply, I think it's consistent with the entire message, which is we need to make the board as informed, as involved, and as credible as possible. And so my intent was not to slow this down, although you just made a comment about 2 years. And so I guess now I go back to transparency, and if what we're doing is offering a job with a 2-year contract, again, I think that's a commitment that we make into future periods and future budgets. And again, we go back to the checks and balances that exist. The reality is that that should be part of the disclosure to the board, part of the nomination process. Reasonably, the dollar value should be, you know what I mean, because it's all going to fit within the budget, but all of that's public information.
The dollar hadn't been worked out
And it hasn't,
at that point.
and that's fine.
Yeah.
And even tonight,
Yeah.
I don't care what the dollar is. I'm sure it fits in the budget. I'm sure you wouldn't step outside that process, but it just goes back to, I want us to get into a give and take where the superintendent says, I want you to build credibility, and it's not that your credibility is questioned. It's our credibility that's questioned, and you or your successor in the interim and beyond can afford us the opportunity to become more of what we could and should be to provide what I think the community is expecting of us and wanting of us. It doesn't mean that we would or should ever validate or invalidate the decision made by the person. I'm also the first guy that would say, you hire a superintendent to do the job. They are your CEO, they do the job. If you don't like the job they're doing, you don't trust them, then change that person, right? Don't micromanage and try to do their job. That's not our role, but I'm just trying to cultivate that. So I think that having a sense that that's a 2-year gig, maybe, as opposed to a 1-year gig, and that we're making a commitment into future periods would, again, be part of what I think the board should know as they make that decision.
Typically, with administrators, the initial contract is a 2-year contract. That has been the historical. I think there may have been a time when they were 1 year, but we shifted over to 2 years. And then once that's completed, then they're typically 3-year rollovers and not any more. I'm not even sure if I could offer more, but typically they are 3-year rollovers. But I think in this instance, this is a known quantity. This is not some stranger that we're taking a gamble on. We've seen and somebody who's really delivered in the school that she's in, and now confidently believes she can deliver across the district.
And has recommendations from coworkers, from the people she's mentoring. Which you can see. I don't know how to. Again, it comes down to a trust. That's why we hired him. We trust him to make these decisions. And if you, I had questions. I went and I had them answered. I don't need to do that here. I can do that on my own and make my own judgment. I hope everybody else did the same thing.
Well, I think that's something we should talk about as well, because I'm not sure that the board should individually march in and declare an audience, expect an audience with administrators or teachers or members of the staff so that we can get our goods. I think the goods ought to come to us as a board.
And I'm not, people may take my comments tonight in different ways, okay? But it's really not about empire building. It's about, it's not that. It's really about that we will function best as a board when we comply with the laws and laws of the state and policies of the district. And I think you raise a good point. Example, the policies in the district would say that we have one on staff board communications, and it doesn't and basically it doesn't happen unless it's through the superintendent. In other words, if you wanted to speak with somebody, then really it should be Jim. I really like to talk with so and so about this. Is that okay? I know that may sound awkward, but that is really how it's supposed to go, and I think. In my year's experience, those rules may seem awkward, but they really do protect both, I think, staff and board members from, I'll just simply say, personal agendas on both sides. Yep. And so it's with good reason. And I think makes for a more thoughtful, organized, or maybe that's not the right way to say it, but a more cohesive, sound organization, as opposed to we're going here, there, and everywhere. And so to me, that's why I try to enforce these things, and it's hard sometimes for public to understand because they don't necessarily strike people as reasonable, but the laws and policies were put in place for a good reason, I think.
So seeing how she's an in-house candidate, have you looked at her evaluations?
Yes.
As evidence?
Yes, yeah.
Have you gotten any feedback from staff once you made the announcement via email?
I don't think, I'm not sure that I have, no, but that's not unusual. I do know that when, after the site visits, more than once, there was somebody in each school that was pressing staff to say, give me your feedback, give me your feedback. And the feedback on Christina was overwhelming, and for the other candidate was frankly quite minimal, weak in comparison.
I guess my question was, after the announcement was made that this candidate was chosen, has there been feedback from staff in regards to this candidate?
I think I got one email from somebody who was on the committee who, I think was questioning the process and some of the communication, and with some of that I agreed, but with some of it I didn't. But in any case, I didn't feel it's so flawed as to change the direction we were in. I will say that what I've heard secondhand is a great deal of excitement and support for this candidate. Again, that's not personally to me, but information that has been shared from staff to others who then tell me.
I've received positive stuff, have you? I think if anything, the one thing I did hear was, which might be part of the concern, is that she holds people accountable. And that might ruffle some staff's feathers. But I think we need more administrators in this district that does that kind of thing. So that's another reason why I'm very in support of her nomination.
Right, any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay.
Thank you very much.
Nomination of certified administrators.
Similar to what happened at the last meeting, there's a list here of all of the administrators who hold, because of their position, hold certificates, and we're presenting them to you. They were kind of held back mostly because you already had enough on your plate last time, but looking for your approval for them to elect them for next year, so similar to teachers.
Do I hear a nomination?
Do we have to nominate them separately?
No, I think before you, I'd recommended you did it by school, right? I think just district administrators, yeah.
Do I have, so I would say...
Administrators and directors.
All right, I'll make a nomination to accept the nominations of the district administrators and district directors for 2014, 2015.
I second that.
All right, any discussion?
I got to tell you guys, and I want to show all respect, but I've never seen anything like it. And honest to God, and he's been doing it for 40 years, so he's got 30 on me. I've been doing it for 12. But I said in my email to the superintendent, I see a single-page listing of the names and titles of administrators, and that's it. But I bet even Kelly, sitting on this board for 6 years, doesn't know what's in their contracts. I can't imagine that this school board wants to be responsible for completely and totally abdicating responsibility. We don't know how many years the contracts are for. We don't know the dollar amount that they are for. We don't, and I asked this, I said, the school board should know the duration of the contract being proposed with any helpful suggestions to explain why they differ, if they do. We should know the current salary, the proposed salary, with the calculated change. We should know the number of years in the position, for instance, because that will help to justify maybe why the salary is what it is or why the change is what it is. We should have some sense maybe of the educational attainment, because sometimes that will help if it helps again to justify the salary level. What are the health and dental provisions? I don't know for the budget process if we really ever talked about what the contributions are. And as a business administrator, I've been beaten up for 12 years about what are the teachers paying, what are the staff paying, is it a fair amount, how does that compare to the rest of the world around us? Summary statements that provides insight into their evaluated performance, and I don't want to see an evaluation. I know by law that we don't have any right to see that, but something that says, hey, I'm giving a really big, I'm giving a big increase to this person because they've done a really good job. They are, an A+, or anything, any metric, any narrative, anything that would give us justification. And then if there's exceptional provisions in that contract that we should know about, there's nothing worse than finding out that somebody's got something special in their contract that ends up costing us dollars, for instance, and we don't know it because it was never anything that was declared. And other than the elections that they make in health and dental, et cetera, which are HIPAA protected, this is all public stuff. And I just don't, again, I go back to, this is not me, for instance, or as a member of the board, suggesting that I would be in a position to judge or contradict. Only that when that is all, and I mean, take that, if we just talk administrators, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we are probably talking about $1 million there. Between payroll expenses, salary, payroll expenses, and benefits, you're gonna vote yay or nay on $1 million, and you don't have the foggiest notion. I've never asked that. And it's not that I question his judgment or that I would say no to it. It's that if the board is deliberately not given that, then you have no way to answer for what those are. And when the newspaper 3 weeks from now or 6 months from now reports something, and the public stands at that microphone and says, how did you guys do that? We'll all stand here and go, oh, I didn't have the foggiest notion. I don't know what it was. I never asked. I'd like to move to table, not because I want to bother these people. I like every one of these people. I'm sure they're doing a great job. It's because I just don't understand how I would be asked to make a vote on that without having some of that basic information. And if there's an argument about why some of that information shouldn't be shared, I'd love to have that conversation. But in some situations, the budget is so deliberately spelled out, the budget is so detailed, that you know what we budgeted for each of those individuals. I don't know that that was the case as I went back through. But I also think that it's unfair to think that I'll go back and try to tie these out and figure out what account this person who's spread across 12 pages is actually on and how much it is. I just think, full disclosure here, more transparency. We won't even have a meeting unless that camera is running because we're so afraid of transparency, and yet we'll support $1 million worth of salaries and benefits without even asking the question. So I'd prefer to table because I'd prefer to see some information. Again, I'm going to be forced. I didn't vote no on the last nomination because I care. I'm sure they've got the right candidate. I just can't believe that it's a 2-year contract and it was something that I never had the opportunity to even know. So I don't want to play parliamentary procedure and say I want to move to table so I can stop this, but I hope that the board will say, hey, let's table this, because it doesn't matter. They're going to get their contracts anyway. Right. We didn't nominate them for April 15th, right? So under the Litkey law, they're going to get whatever is coming to them, plus whatever we agree to. I just think the full disclosure would be it would make me feel like an informed, educated, and respected board member as a part of this process.
Yeah, I'll second that. I guess a lot of it has to do with knowledge. We need the knowledge, even though we're not making the ultimate decision. Knowledge is still something we need to have, so if the public has a question, we can answer it.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I think we need to go over the 3 roles that a school board has. Hire a superintendent, pass a budget, and what's the other one? Set policy.
But this
We hire a
pertains to-
superintendent to do the very things that you're asking. It's implied. I don't, if we did everything that you're suggesting tonight, we would be here until midnight, every single meeting that we had.
We're responsible for the budget, though, and that's.
And those salaries are in that budget.
If you make that argument, then we need to reduce that agenda to 3 items and stop spending more than 15 minutes in these meetings. It's a ludicrous argument. Part of policy and budget is helping to provide guidance and leadership to the district. And I said this in the email to the superintendent, and I'll say it to everybody now. I voted no a minute ago, and to my recollection, that's the first time I've opposed anything he's brought to this table. I am not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to be an informed and educated board member. And the reason we don't get the support of the community is because we haven't been that before now. Because when you can allow that to happen and not ask a single question, shame on us. I'm not doing it. I've never done it in the dozen years in service to school boards.
I can tell you.
So I'm not doing it
that I'm
tonight.
familiar with several of these contracts, probably not all of them.
But I'm not,
Okay,
and neither are the other
so
four,
you need to
right?
ask the questions. You need to go to him.
I
You know
I got the
tabling
board
it.
packet on Tuesday, and the nomination is here now, and I asked him in an email today, and I think the process that's broken, why I'm not ready to run yet, is because I shouldn't have to ask for basic information. My superintendent should just give it to me. And it's not, I don't want to make a reflection on this individual, because he's only doing what he's done, I'm sure, for 4 years. I'm encouraging us to do it differently, and I'd like to pause, because I can't accept it like that. So I emailed, but I didn't get a chance to review the things, because I had a meeting Tuesday night, and I had a meeting Wednesday night, and I just haven't had a chance. So now that I've had a chance, I look at it and go, no kidding. I got one page of very simple information in black and white. I'll ask for that information, and I'll hope that you guys will help us take a pause on this so that I can get more of that information before we pass on it.
I think it's important.
If I may, when you developed the budget last year, all of these salaries were laid out. That may be so, but I did give you a copy. But they're there, and they were voted by you folks. They were voted then by the voters, and so that was one of your duties. You also, what was also included in that budget very explicitly was $28,084 for my use to provide performance raises. Nothing to do with degree status, nothing to do with number of years, performance raises for people on individual contracts, some of whom are district administrators and directors, and some of whom are non-certified positions, yet they're on that. And so you clearly have set a direction for your superintendent as what you expect him to do, and the voters agreed to that. And that's what I'm doing. What has been the past practice, and I did it the other day with Gail, is to provide a list, go over and say, here's how I distributed that $28,000, and seek feedback from the chair. I used to do it, I did it with Kelly, I did it with Cliff, no different, and get feedback, and she gave me feedback, and so I've made some adjustments. I'm not completed, but I know I'm going to make adjustments, and still, the bottom line will be $28,084. I can give you, if you're anxious about the contract, I brought a copy of one here. I'm happy to circulate it around. It is the template that all of them have. You're not going to see anything unusual there, because I have to adhere in all of this to the policies of this district. Now, some of those policies ebb from the teachers' collective bargaining agreement. So there are elements in here that mirror that. You're going to see some places in this contract that don't, because it was never changed for this particular person, and it will be changed. It was changed in all of the others, but it didn't really matter here. But I'll hand it around. You'll see what it looks like. It's nothing outrageous. So as you see here for this individual in the upper right-hand corner, it shows this is a contract that ran from 2012 to 2015. Begins saying the date on which the agreement was made between the Newmarket School District and the individual. Item 1 is employment, just a statement. We agree to employ this person, and here's his role. Term is number 2. That shows that it's for a period of those 3 years, and it shows a date by which, if the person chooses to renegotiate, renew, terminate, whatever, they have to notify. Number 3 is what their assignment is. And again, there's some legalese in there that basically says we can assign him to something else as long as he's qualified, and so we can do that. 4 is duties and responsibilities, a lot of legalese, statutes of state of New Hampshire, rules and regulations of Department of Ed, and all of that. Number 5 is where there can be variation, work day and work year, and it depends, again, most of these I can tell you, let's see, Pat Ballantyne is not year-round. Deb Raffo is not year-round. Linda Hopi is not year-round. I'm not sure about Tom Pavlidis, to be honest with you, I don't remember. But in any case, there is a variation there of work day, work year. All of the work days basically says, no, there are no fixed hours. You get to do what you have to do to get the job done. Number 6 is salary, and in the first year of the contract, it lists the salary that is agreed to, and then for subsequent years, it simply says you won't earn any less. You might earn more. At the bottom on this particular one, I will point out to you, because it's only in 2 contracts in the district, people who are on a track or already have a PhD or a doctorate of some sort, there's a $2,000 additional amount that is paid to them or offered to them as incentive. On number 7, vacation days, and it varies again by are you year-round or not. Same for holidays, varies year-round or not. Personal leave is again, personal leave, sick leave, jury duty, bereavement leave, professional leave, professional memberships, up to professional leave. That's all the same as what's in a teacher's contract. Professional memberships, they get a state and national association membership. Course reimbursement, same as in the teacher's contract. Health and dental, no different than teacher's contract. There's one of the areas where what was not changed was the opt-out program. Remember, we changed, and just in this particular draft of this contract, it's not been changed, but it is changed for others. There's long-term disability insurance for the employee. There's a life insurance policy for the employee. The severance package is identical to what's in the teacher's contract. Evaluations, you see in here, and I know this is a cart before the horse discussion that'll still need to happen, is that here I am setting a salary, and I'm setting a salary based on my assessment of their performance to date, and I think, I work with them closely on a day-to-day basis and supervise them very well, and have a good sense of who may get a typical or an average kind of one and who deserves the over and above additional amount for performance. And yet, we set a deadline of August 31st as when their actual evaluation is done. Now, again, it feels cart before the horse, but their school year hasn't finished yet. And so you want to do an evaluation that reflects the whole year, and that was the thinking of that. Resignation, this particular one has to give 60 days' notice. I think that's pretty usual in all of our contracts. Termination, that's legalese on reasons by which we might be able to terminate somebody if we choose to. Modifications to the contract, savings clause, that's all legalese. So that is in essence what it is, and I explained earlier that it's a 2-year or a 3-year. Some people I have had on 1 year. I can tell you there are some people get 0% raises because they're not performing. So I do take that piece very seriously. What I've tried to do in the past is rotate contracts so that I'm not writing all new contracts every year. So I have a bunch, but what's happened now is that they've kind of bunched into 2 of the 3-year cycle. I have a bunch that are completing at the end of next year, and then another bunch the end of the following year, and right now I only have 1 person that ends in 2017. So I understand, your concerns, but again, I feel like your job is to set the budget. You set the budget. You set the direction for me, and that is give performance raises to people to no more than $28,084, and it's my job to evaluate or be responsible for others to evaluate them, and that's what I've done.
I think we need to table it, and I think if you have additional questions, anybody else can give those questions to you, and then we can see this at our next meeting. I think that's what's been asked.
Well, it would seem to me that, at the very least, that's a motion to table. That's not just
I haven't withdrawn my motion, and I don't really plan to.
So,
So
was
we
there a
have to have a
second?
vote, yeah.
Was there a second for yours? Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of voting on recommending the administrative staff, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
So Nathan's motion, can you please?
I certainly, kills me that we had to vote nay. There seems to be the suggestion that if the information is provided, that makes it fair game for us to contradict it. and I just said a second ago, it hasn't been my practice to vote no on anything, and I wouldn't do it on this either. It is the superintendent's prerogative. But implicit in the suggestion that that's all you get, and you gotta fight me to get anything else, is why? It's all justified, it all makes sense. There's no reason why we shouldn't know it, be proud of it, celebrate it, endorse it, vote for it, be a unanimous vote. I'm all for that. I hope it comes up another time. I hope that we're provided with some additional information, and I hope that we can then unanimously nominate. I certainly want all of these administrators to stay in place and help us lead this district moving forward. If what happens now is, we tell these guys they don't have contracts and they're all getting pink slipped or some foolish thing, oh my God, what a gross overreaction, right?
But if they're scared, Nathan.
Might happen.
Why are they scared? They have a job. They have a contract July 15th.
It might
Whether you
happen.
say yea or nay tonight, they still have a contract 1 July. We didn't non-renew them. We simply didn't approve 2-year and 3-year. I want to approve 2 and 3-year. I'm just saying we ought to have more information. So let's have a vote so it's 2 to 3 so that we can really, fire them up. Just
It's going to get, rumors happen, and if that happens, you can't, I mean, I just don't like the way you just stated that. It just,
Stated what?
you know, that if people start thinking they're getting pink slips, if people get scared, there's a reason for it.
I'm just saying, don't go back and say that because they voted 2 to 3, that there's no contracts. That's not at all the case. It easily could have been tabled. We'll come back and talk about this next time. But now we're going to play chicken and Guns N' Roses here or something. I don't get this. So now I'm back to, I think we need to work hard as a board to try to get on the same page. What you guys just told me with your 2 to 3 vote is, that's all you want to see. You don't want to know anything
I'm
else.
not interested in micromanaging him.
I'm not going to micromanage him.
That's what it appeals to me.
Okay.
It's a matter of providing us with some additional information.
It presumes that I've established a track record that if he shares information, I'll use it against him and I'll vote no and I'll convince others to vote no or anything like that.
If that's how you think, I have no interest in micromanaging him.
You
And
have
I-
no
and if I
interest
wanna
in knowing
know.
what you're paying.
I know what they have. I know.
You just
I've
look at
asked him the
budget.
questions. I've looked at the budget.
Then
Call him up if you
then
have questions.
table it so that
mean,
I can go
Right,
back
so
and I
that's
can
why we
take the
tabled
time.
it. People
We got
had
it
questions and
Tuesday night.
concerns.
It was
so allow
on
for
the
it.
agenda that we all got
No
on
problem.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, we got it on Tuesday. It was
So
in the
table
right
it.
to know meeting last
Table it,
night.
but I don't have time to talk about facility stuff for the
actually
next
read it on
week,
my
because I
lunch
gotta go
hour
through the
today.
budget and
So,
figure out all the details.
Then maybe the real question is, how long do you need to digest an agenda?
I think it's a specific item on the agenda that needs
Should
an
we
appropriate amount of
ask,
time.
should
I
we
think
ask our
Tuesday
superintendent to
evening
give
with
it to
one
us on the
evening.
Friday before? That's well within our right.
That's
If we
fine.
don't have enough time
But that
to,
can be part of a tabled discussion. That could be part of, we're tabling it because, and maybe we need to look at the way that we prepare the agenda. And if that's something you would like, or Nate or anyone else on the board, feel free to ask Jim and I. We can meet at another time. We can develop the agenda so that you have enough time
I have
to
plenty
make
of time.
educated decisions and ask questions.
I have plenty of time.
Some of us don't, and I think.
So
we-
I'm saying, I'm giving you the opportunity.
Hey, if you've got plenty of time, help me out. We're all on the same board together. Cull through your budget and tell me what all their salaries are right now. And send it to me in an email. will you?
Off the top of my head.
No, you don't have to. You got time.
Yeah.
Good. No, I don't mean that. I mean, you just told me it's in the budget.
It is.
Then, if you've got all that time, help me
I'm
out.
not saying I have extra time on my hands. I have enough time from Tuesday to now to digest
I'm
this
saying
agenda.
hit print. It's in the payroll. It shouldn't be that difficult to just
Can I
give me
ask a question,
information.
Jim? With, obviously, this was a discussion amongst board members. How do, so if you didn't have the time and if this was a concern for you, and maybe I did have the time, could he have called me and asked me? This is where I'm getting confused, this right to know thing. Could Nathan have called me and said, listen, I'm not comfortable voting for this. What do you know? And then I could have said, well, you know, we voted on the budget, and then I would have said to Nathan, hey, how do you normally do this? You know, could there have been a conversation amongst us?
Why does he have to go to you? Why can't he?
No,
go to me?
any,
best
just
con- no.
anybody, you
I
or
wouldn't
anybody.
suggest that,
But
to
you're
be honest
saying,
with you. I'd expect to
He's
have
the
a
guy that has the
conversation with the
information.
superintendent.
okay, so he would rather have him go.
I think that.
And that's what I did.
I think
Okay.
I just didn't do it in a timely fashion.
Right.
My mistake.
I don't think it's a
And I
mistake
think even
at
now,
all.
I think that's good advice. I mean, I hope you're not expecting I'm coming back next week with some matrix that publicly displays all of that stuff, because that's not not at all my intention, but if you want to sit down with me and we talk about things, I'm happy to.
Okay.
And I think that was the intention, is to get some time to think about, wow, what's the financial
I understand,
implications?
but let me say this as a superintendent on his way out, and please take it in the positive intention with which it's delivered, and that is that you hire a superintendent to have a tremendous amount of expertise and execute every policy and direction you want to make sure that school system is high quality and a terrific organization. And the more you get into the weeds, the more you're going to be meeting at 11 o'clock at night and really not dealing with things appropriately. You have to give, I'm on my way out, but whoever comes in, you have to give a certain level of trust to that individual. And unless you've got a reason not to, then you should support that recommendation from the superintendent. And that's been my experience. If you really want to be an effective board, otherwise you're going to get bogged down, like we did tonight, in areas that are just going to be more frustrating to you. You want more, and I get that you want more, but by the same token, you're elected volunteers, and I'm a full-time 60, 70-hour-a-week employee that's working hard for you. And so there's got to be some degree of trust for the next person who comes in here if you're going to be effective as a board.
I don't think what happened tonight was us being bogged down. I think what happened to us tonight was us really looking at the overall picture of it and determining what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do. And it leads us into a nice discussion, hopefully later on, about what it means to be an effective board. Is it okay that we disagree? I don't find that bogged down at all. I find it very healthy. I think it's important that we have conversations and we're courteous to someone who's on the board who may have questions. I think that's important.
To two good examples, and I think some people were talking to that tonight. To vote 2 to 3 against nomination of principals, when I don't think there was any reason to oppose that. And similarly last time to frankly, from my perspective, to table a vote on a football contract. As decision makers, you always need to understand that, yes, there are consequences that are impinging on your decision, but there are all these unintended consequences that then spring off from that. And I think we experienced some of those with the football contract, and I don't know what ones they'll be with this. You're absolutely right, though. These people know that April 15th has come and gone. They feel confident in their job security. But there is a message that's sent that can be unnerving, and that you need to know that.
Well, I think in the last 4 or 5 meetings, or all the meetings I've been to, we've asked for more information prior to the meeting so we can make an educated even nomination, just so we can be educated. We are the board, so I don't think there's anything wrong with educating us.
No,
personally.
I don't think there is.
And I think that if there's a contract involved, as you said, I think we should be able to see the previous contract and the new contract, and not just, hey, here's the new contract, you don't need to know what the old contract said. So, that's knowledge that we should have. And I think, I don't know.
Past boards have expressed confidence in the superintendent and the chair to make that happen. That's how it's been done, and that's fine.
I'm as sad and sorry as I can be that we get to this. The conversation we want to have with our public, the conversation we had with our public ended the way that it did on March 11th or 12th or 13th, or whatever we voted, because we don't ask the questions and simply have information. I think we're not credible with our community because we haven't asked enough. And what I'm hoping that superintendent can help us with, and the interim and the superintendent's coming, is not facilitate and encourage micromanagement, but simply help us to be more credible, because a good number of those 800 that we're hoping will trust us, believe in us, and find us credible, expect us to ask some of those questions and have those answers. Not challenge the decision-making authority of the superintendent or dismiss his recommendations.
But know what we're
talking about.
Voting on. That's all.
I do understand.
So when we go to budget, this would be a great conversation to have.
To know what we're voting on, yes.
All right. That was my manifesto.
Yeah, you packed it up.
I did.
Why'd you do that?
I don't know where it went.
I like
Oh,
how
here
you
it
call
is.
it a manifesto.
All
That's 'cause
right.
I'm hungry. I want pasta.
On to manifests.
I move to accept the manifest of $384,554.24.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Only that I didn't sign it yet, and I will if you let me have it.
Oh, it's right there.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, looking at the calendar.
On May, what's not on there, I noticed, is on the 15th, 6 PM, that budget work session.
16th.
On the 15th? Yeah, Thursday.
I'm going to work to make adjustments. As I said last time, I'm not going to be here on the 15th. I'll be out of state, but I may work to change that. So I'll keep you informed. And I apologize.
No problem.
Is that the one that starts at 6?
Yes.
Okay.
And the only thing that,
thought
well,
that was
I
another
mean,
one.
we haven't gotten to June yet, so I'll wait.
No bingo, but there's a Laotian happy,
Yes.
Laotian New Year.
Friday.
Friday night.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a great time if you can make it.
Oh, there's a bingo. Oh, wait a minute, it's the last bingo. I suggest everybody go to bingo, because it is an experience, and it's a way of connecting with your community.
Graduation on the 13th,
Graduation on the
6
13th.
o'clock. I don't, let me look here. I can't remember, I'm going to go back to May, see if it was on there. I know you all were invited to the top 10 luncheon. I forget what date it's on.
The 20th,
Boy, if you can make it, it's just a terrific time. What is it, 20th?
20th.
20th. It's just a terrific time with some terrific kids, so please take them up on that invitation.
Sister's 50th birthday.
On one that I need to get out more, but I want to make sure everybody knows that the last day of school is the June 20th, but also that it's an early release day. So it's a half day for students, it's a full day for staff.
It seems early.
It's a Friday.
Does
I'll
it?
take it.
Does it seem early? I don't know.
It's exciting.
All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Get that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.